Chapter 1180. Xu Yang stood at the edge of the cliff and looked at the familiar wind-thunder platform. He shook his head and smiled emotionally. Everything has changed in my previous life. Only this wind-thunder platform remains the same. Star 51. At this moment, it was freezing cold. Whether it was the cliff or the wind-thunder platform, they were all covered in snow. If it was an ordinary person, the slightest slip would cause them to die without a burial ground. Xu Yang looked at the surroundings with some nostalgia and said, "Back then, Mo Tianji was watching from there. And the ambushers were here, and here, at the same place. In my previous life, if I panicked and didn't know where to go, I would go east. That's where I was. After I rushed there, I encountered the first wave of ambushers. Then, I changed my direction and encountered the second wave of ambushers. I changed my direction continuously and was attacked head-on. So I retreated back to the wind-thunder platform. Then, I realized that other than the few places I rushed to, there were no ambushers at all." Xu Yang smiled lightly. It can be seen how accurate Mo Tianji's understanding of my character was. It must have been hard on him. At that time, not only did he have to calculate every step I took, he also had to find so many people to die with me based on my cultivation. Xu Yang shook his head and smiled bitterly. The sword spirit looked at this place and couldn't help but exclaim, "It's indeed impressive. This place seemed to be a dangerous place. But as long as one's lightness skills reached a certain level, one could jump to the top of the cliff. Moreover, the cliff was hundreds of feet high. One could choose any place to land. If one were to say that trapping a person to death in such a place, it would be as difficult as ascending to heaven." But Mo Tianji actually managed to force Xu Yang, who had already rushed out, back to the wind-thunder platform without wasting any manpower. This kind of calculation, this kind of confidence, this kind of scheming, it was simply terrifying. Looking at the dangerous terrain in front of him, Xu Yang raised his head and opened his mouth to catch the snowflakes in the sky. He asked, "Sword Spirit, do you feel anything?" After all, this was information from his previous life. In his previous life, he only confirmed this place after much research, but whether it was there or not, he didn't have time to verify it. "Yes, it's here," the sword spirit said excitedly. "I can already feel the aura of the sword tongue." "Sword tongue?" Xu Yang asked. "The fifth fragment of the sword is actually a sword tongue." "Yes." The sword spirit pointed and said, "Look at these two cliffs, facing each other. Does it not look like a person opening his mouth? Between the stone pillars, does the wind-thunder platform look like a person's tongue?" Xu Yang frowned and sized it up for a long while. Then he nodded in a far-fetched manner. "Indeed, it's very similar." He thought to himself, "Damn it. If it weren't for their preconceived notions, who would have thought that this cliff actually looked like a human mouth? How old must he be to have such a big mouth?" Thinking about it this way, Xu Yang couldn't help but smile strangely. The sword spirit was puzzled. "What are you laughing at?" Xu Yang said seriously. "I'm thinking if this is really a person's mouth, then how big is this person's body?" The sword spirit pondered for a moment and said, "It should be similar to this mountain." Xu Yang said solemnly, "If that's the case, there will be a problem." The sword spirit couldn't help but ask, "What problem?" Xu Yang frowned and said very worriedly, "If this person is a man, then what about his wife? Can she take it?" The sword spirit looked at him dumbfounded. Xu Yang continued to worry. "If this person is a woman, then what about her husband? How can she? Tsk. Poor man. He must feel so inferior and ashamed that he wants to die." The sword spirit was dumbfounded. Finally, he lowered his head in dejection and speechlessness. At this moment, the sword spirit deeply understood a truth. Why could Xu Yang become the last sword master of the tribulation sword, and others couldn't? Because Xu Yang's thinking didn't belong to a human at all. The sword spirit would never be able to catch up with the speed of his thinking. When the previous sword masters of the tribulation sword obtained the tribulation sword, they were all thinking about what to do after cultivating the divine technique. They were all looking forward to the future. But this guy was thinking about such things at such a serious moment. The direction of his thinking was so out of tune. It was so ridiculous that the sword spirit didn't know whether to laugh or cry. The sword spirit couldn't help but want to give his shameless face and dirty mouth a good kick. Just as he was about to express his feelings, the sword master said in a very strange voice, "Let's go. Why are you still in a daze at such a critical moment? What's wrong with your brain? You're starting to worry about the country and the people at this time? That's really untimely." Chuyang shook his head. He criticized, "I really don't understand your brain. It doesn't belong to a human at all. It's too abnormal." Shaking his head, the sword spirit actually jumped over helplessly. It was as if he was saying, "You're abnormal. I'm ashamed to be associated with you." Even though the sword spirit was a soul, he also had the urge to vomit blood at this moment. Fuck. Who is the abnormal one between the two of us? Can you please figure it out? Helpless, the sword spirit also floated over with a stomach full of depression. The sword master had already become extremely serious. He didn't give the sword spirit a chance to discuss the topic just now at all. He immediately said, "Long delays may cause trouble. Check immediately where exactly the sword mouthpiece is hidden." The sword spirit choked for a moment. He had no choice but to check carefully. In his dantian, the sword tip, sword edge, sword blade, and sword guard of the calamity sword, which were revolving around a strand of primordial real silk, suddenly stopped moving and automatically combined together. The sword intent that had been swimming around the four sword segments also stopped moving. Then, the sword tip pointed upward and actually rushed out of Chu Yang's dantian. Chu Yang could clearly feel that the four sword segments in his body were all filled with an inexplicable feeling of ecstasy at this moment. It was as if brothers who had been separated for 10,000 years were about to reunite at this moment, and they could sense each other's presence. That seemed to be the case. The sword spirit checked for a while and pointed at his feet with certainty. "It's right here." Chuyang frowned. "This place. Do I have to dig it all up?" He felt a little regretful about this wonderful sight. Such a solitary pillar that had stood for tens of thousands of years. Such a wonderful sight would probably cease to exist the moment he took out the sword mouthpiece. The sword spirit nodded and said dispassionately, "It's absolutely impossible for such a stone pillar to stand for tens of thousands of years, just by relying on the support of wind and thunder on both sides. The only possibility is, there's a heavenly treasure below, and only such a heavenly treasure that is favored by heaven and earth can use its life force to protect the stone pillar for tens of thousands of years." Heavenly treasure? Chuyang was shocked. Could it be? The sword spirit nodded heavily, a smile in his eyes. "If I'm not wrong, I'm afraid another piece of miraculous medicine is about to be born." Chuyang took a deep breath. His eyes emitted a dazzling light. He licked his lips and said, "I don't want to destroy this wonder. It's a gift from the heavens. I have no choice but to take it." The sword spirit snorted. "Isn't that too shameless? Haven't you always taken it as your duty to defy heaven?" Chuyang flew into a rage out of humiliation. "Even if I want to defy heaven, I won't defy heavenly treasures." The sword spirit was completely speechless. Chuyang was silent for a while and calmed his emotions. Finally, with a flip of his palm, the calamity sword appeared in his hand almost joyfully. With a swing of the sword, the mysterious ice that was tens of thousands of years old on the ground cracked open. Chuyang kicked out. With two bangs, two pieces of mysterious ice the size of small mountains flew down the wind-thunder platform, revealing the brown stone surface. Chuyang was about to slash down with his sword when he suddenly made a sound of surprise. He seemed to have discovered that the surface of the stone under his feet seemed to have changed color at this moment. It seemed to have turned yellow, but when he looked carefully, there was no change. "Stones can change color?" Chuyang asked. The sword spirit was startled. "What? This guy obviously didn't see it." Chuyang didn't say anything. He slashed 3 times consecutively. Immediately, stone fragments flew everywhere on the wind-thunder platform. The wind howled and thunder roared faintly, but Chu Yang's sword seemed to have cut the wind and thunder in half. Slashing the wind and thunder on the wind-thunder platform, he stretched out his left hand and pressed it against the stone surface. With a sudden suction, a large piece of stone was sucked out by him. With a shake of his hand, the stone fell into the abyss with a rumble, accompanied by the sound of wind and thunder. The surface of the stone that he had cut open was the center of the power of wind and thunder. Once it was cut open, the left side rumbled with thunder and thunder, while the right side was raging with strong winds. What a magical power! Chuyang sighed. His feet were nailed to the stone surface like rocks. Without any mercy, he slashed 7 or 8 times consecutively. Rocks continued to fall down the mountain with a rumbling sound. Fortunately, this place was desolate and uninhabited, and the mountain was sealed off by heavy snow. Otherwise, such a commotion would definitely attract people. Dozens of large stones were thrown down by him. With a snap, the stone platform that connected the two sides of the cliff finally broke. The left and right sides were like 2 large flat plates that fell from the sky. Only a straight stone pillar was left. There was no one to lean on either side. There was only one Chuyang on top of the stone pillar. This feeling is really fucking exciting. Chuyang stood on top of the stone pillar. After losing the traction and fixing force on both sides, the stone pillar with a diameter of 30 feet began to sway. Moreover, the sway was getting bigger and bigger. It was like a long and thin bamboo pole being blown by the wind, upside down, upside down. One could imagine how Minister Chu, who was at the top of this bamboo pole, felt at this moment. If not for his high cultivation level, he would have been thrown out long ago. This job is really not something an ordinary person can do. Chuyang swayed left and right while his hands continued to mine. His movements were getting faster and faster. He was afraid that if the stone pillar fell, he would have to spend more effort to find it. Of course, the most important thing was that if it fell, the heavenly treasures inside would definitely be destroyed. That would make Chuyang's heart ache. Banging sounds rang out continuously, shaking the valley. In the time it took to take a few breaths, Chuyang had already dug down 400 feet, like a hot knife through butter. He slashed horizontally with his sword, flew up, and kicked a large stone several feet away. Then, he landed on the cross-section. Finally, when he had cut all the way down to 2,000 feet, the situation finally changed. Third update. Please vote. Chapter 1183. Ridiculous. The Demon Empress laughed without any expression. Her voice was cold. Zixieqing knelt down properly, biting her red lips. She did not say a word. Do you know the benefits of your body? The Demon Empress said lightly. Although you are not a native of the Heaven Imperial Court, you are originally from the Purple Martin clan. But you unintentionally received the power of the sage and were reborn. Although your cultivation is low now, the power of the sage has been stabilized in your body, and you have cultivated the purple mystic core. This is different from the demons of the Heaven Imperial Court. So I need your help. Otherwise, I would not have taken a fancy to a small purple martin like you. Although you are the only purple mystic martin in the Heaven Imperial Court, you are just SOSO. The Demon Empress said coldly. You should know that I'm only taking some of your blood essence and some of your core essence to treat my son's illness. Even though it will greatly damage your body, it won't cause you to lose your roots, much less harm your life. Instead, I will repay you. You leave your root, and I will send people to protect you until you recover. Then you can laugh proudly in the Heaven Imperial Court. The Demon Empress' eyes became colder and colder, and there was a murderous aura. Although you have hidden your strength, I can see that you are not an emperor. At most, you are only in the heaven realm, and only in the early stages. I value you because the power of the sage in your body can save Tai's life. That is all. Zixieqing said lightly. I've already known about this long ago. The Demon Empress said angrily. I am not talking nonsense with you. I want you to know that although your cultivation is low now, as long as you give up your blood and Jindan essence, after you recover, and dual cultivate with Tai, you can cross the barrier that you have not crossed for hundreds of thousands of years. With the help of the power of the demon royal bloodline, you can activate the power of the sage in your body, and you can become the most promising star of the Heaven Imperial Court. I also want to tell you, as long as you agree, when I die, as long as you are still alive, the position of the new Demon Empress will be yours. This is something that even the Tianke Celestial Emperor cannot change. When the time comes, you will be an overlord, ruling the world. Waving your hand, the stars will bow, changing the weather with anger. It is the ultimate life duo of everyone in the Heaven Imperial Court. Do you understand? The demon empress snorted coldly. I understand. Zi Xieching's voice was low but firm. But I still want to be a human. Trash. The demon empress was displeased as her eyes shot out two rays of white light. He looked into Zi Xieching's eyes and said, Zi Xieching, look into my eyes when you speak. She stared at Zi Xieching with the whites of her eyes and asked word by word. Are you serious? Want to be a human? You don't want to be a demon? Zi Xieching's face revealed a perplexed look. It was as if her mind was completely bewitched at this moment, and she could only let her heart speak. Her voice rang out. Although she was confused, her words were clear. I want to be a human. The demon empress' body shook, and the white light in her eyes vanished. He heaved a long sigh and said, You have disappointed me so much. The demon clan is now in a three-way battle, and is losing ground. I waited so long for Gui to change his mind, and come back by himself. I even teleported back to see you immediately. You actually only told me this one sentence. You want to be a human? Her voice was low, and she couldn't hide the pain in her heart. Zi Xieching regained her senses. She said guiltily, I only asked the demon empress to fulfill my wish. The demon empress heaved a long sigh. I'll tell you one last time. The demon empress' voice was heavy. She turned her face and said, Firstly, from a demon to a human. If you don't go through reincarnation, you have to go through the soul-splitting platform and experience the pain of splitting your soul 81 times. Then, you have to enter the heartbreak spring and experience the pain of your heart 81 times. Finally, you have to enter the demon forging cave and experience the demon annihilation thunder 81 times. You have to shed your demonic aura. Only then can you become a human. This process, not to mention you, even I. The demon empress took a deep breath and said, May not be able to bear it. Do you know? I know, Zi Xieching said in a low voice. And I also know that the soul-splitting platform, Heartbreak Spring and Demon Forging Cave are only with you, and only you can open them. Then, do you know that once you make this decision, it's equivalent to betraying the entire demon clan? Especially the Purple Martin clan of the Heaven Imperial Court. It's a great humiliation. From then on, all the demons will treat you as a disgrace and kill you quickly. From then on, you will be the enemy of the entire world? The demon empress asked in a low voice. I know, Zi Xieching said firmly. Do you know that after you sacrifice a portion of your lifeblood essence and Jindan essence, even if you can withstand the Soul Foundation stage, the Heartbreak Spring, and the Demon Tempering Cave, your cultivation base will be reduced to less than a tenth? And you will need 3 years to recover? She did not wait for Zi Xieching to speak and continued. Don't think that 3 years is a short time. In this world, even if you blink 3 times, the world will change. Before you blink, the world may celebrate. But when you open your eyes again, there may be a mountain of bones. And you, 70,000 years ago, when you ran amok in the Heaven Imperial Court, you should know how many people you have offended. In addition to the encirclement of all the demons in the world, how confident do you think you can survive? The demon empress asked coldly. Not even 10%. Zi Xieching said frankly. If that's the case, then you can give up. The demon empress heaved a sigh of relief. Although I don't have a 50% chance of surviving, I will not regret it even if I die. Zi Xieching straightened her delicate back. You. The demon empress turned around abruptly and looked at her sharply. How dare you? Zi Xieching did not say anything. She pursed her lips, but her eyes were filled with determination. Beside the demon empress, a beautiful woman in white who had been sitting quietly asked softly, Zi Xieching, I want to know why you did this. What is the reason? Zi Xieching blushed and lowered her head. The woman in white's voice was very calm. She said lightly, For a man. Zi Xieching bit her lips and nodded slowly. But even if you maintain your demon body, you can still marry him. Although both the human and demon clans will not tolerate it, as long as you do it secretly. There is still a way out. The woman in white frowned slightly. Why must you seek your own death? Zi Xieching's teeth sank deeply into her red lips. After a long time, she said with difficulty, 75,000 years ago, by Susu, The demon empress and the woman in white trembled and looked at each other speechlessly. Baisusu was a legend in the demon clan, a legend that betrayed the orthodox path. Baisusu was the #1 genius of the White Fox clan. After she transformed, she wandered the martial world and accidentally met a descendant of the Windy Sky Pavilion. The two of them wandered the martial world side by side and fell in love with each other. Baisusu knew that humans and demons could not coexist, so she hid her identity and married the man resolutely. However, tragedy finally happened. A few years later, their child was born. This child had a human body and a fox tail. The moment it was born, it was filled with demon aura. The descendant of the Windy Sky Pavilion was like a thunderbolt and questioned his wife. Baisusu had no choice but to admit her identity. The man was also loyal. That night, he left the sect with his wife and child and fled to the ends of the world. However, both the human and demon clans could not tolerate such a thing. They chased after him and finally killed his entire family at the foot of Mount Kanglin. It was said that before he died, the fox elder asked Baisusu if she regretted it. Baisusu said, "I regretted it later. I didn't dare to go through the soul-dividing platform and the demon-forging cave. Because of that, my husband and child lost their lives. I don't regret marrying him. I don't dare to regret it, and I can't regret it. I can't bear to regret it." After saying that, Baisusu passed away. The elites who chased after her felt touched and buried her. They named the slanting valley as the Regretless Gorge. It was also from that time onwards that although the marriage between humans and demons was still prohibited on the surface, even if it was discovered secretly, everyone would turn a blind eye to it. They would no longer kill them. They knew that unless they loved each other to the extreme, no one would touch such a taboo. It could be said that Baisusu had used her own life to open a window for a love that transcended the secular world. Although she did not enjoy it herself, whenever there was a demon clan member who loved a human so much that they could not help themselves and got married, they would come to the Regretless Gorge to worship Baisusu. Although the Regretless Gorge had always been deserted, there were still candles burning all year round. Now that Xiexing mentioned Baisusu, the two women immediately understood what she was worried about. Xiexing did not want the man she loved to be humiliated because of her. She did not want the man she loved to become the laughingstock of the world because of her. However, she could not leave him and could not let him go. Therefore, she resolutely chose to go through all kinds of pain and become a human. The beautiful woman in white sighed sadly. No one knew what she was thinking. After a long time she said, "Big sister, you grant him his wish. You don't regret it?" The demon empress sighed. She looked at Xiexing with a complicated gaze. "No." Xiexing nodded resolutely. "Is he worth it?" The woman in white asked. "I think he's worth it. Even if he's not worth it, he's worth it." Xiexing replied softly. "Even if he's not worth it, he's worth it." The demon empress' eyes were cold. "One day, I'd like to see if you're worth it." She turned around like a whirlwind and said word by word, "All right. Since you're so stubborn, you'll bear all the consequences alone. As long as you save my son, I'll grant your wish." "Thank you, Demon Empress," Xiexing said gratefully. "No need to thank me." The Demon Empress said lightly, "This is a deal. I only want my son to come back to life. As for you, you just want to be a human. Be a human. You saved my son, and I'll grant you your wish to be a human. We'll exchange the money and the goods. We'll be clear, and we won't owe each other anything." "Yes." Xiexing relaxed and remained silent. It seemed that the words "we won't owe each other anything" had spoken to her heart. Chapter 1184. The beautiful lady in white looked at Xiexing with a complicated look in her eyes. But she didn't say anything. "Do you have any other requests?" the Demon Empress asked. Xiexing said, "When the Empress wakes up, please send someone to send me to my old residence in Jiangnan." The Demon Empress frowned. "This is the agreed place. I'm asking you if you have any other requests." "Other than that, I have no other requests." Xiexing lowered her eyes. "Good." The Demon Empress gritted her teeth and said, "If that's the case, then you can die in Jiangnan." Her figure flashed and disappeared from the hall. Her voice came from afar. Tomorrow morning save my son. Tomorrow morning, send him to hell. The beautiful lady in white stood for a while and said softly, You shouldn't have rejected the demon empress' kindness. Zixieqing said softly, If I owe you today, I can't repay you. I hope you won't regret your decision today. The beautiful lady in white sighed. That man, where is he now? Zixieqing bit her lips and said, His cultivation is not enough to come up. The beautiful lady in white was stunned. She looked at her deeply and sighed. You're so rash. Zixieqing smiled quietly. I'm not rash. Through this I've cut off all my escape routes. The beautiful lady in white was stunned again. She laughed and said, I see. Zixieqing, when you reach Jiangnan, maybe I'll visit you. Zixieqing smiled. You're welcome anytime. The beautiful lady in white smiled faintly. Suddenly, a cloud of white fog rose from her feet. This white fog actually carried her whole body and floated out. Zixieqing stood up quietly. A gentle smile appeared on her lips. The next morning, Zixieqing was meditating in the courtyard. She sensed something. The demon empress voice sounded. Go to the empress dowager's bedroom. Everything is ready. When Zixieqing came out of the bedroom, her face was pale. At one side, the demon empress sighed and said, You've used up too much energy. My son is fine now. But if you go to the soul-splitting platform now you'll die. Let's do it in the afternoon. Zixieqing said, Yes. She returned to her temporary residence and took out a purple pill. Her eyes revealed a gentle look. She swallowed it. It was the super heavy pill that Chu Yang had refined for her. Only by eating it now could he recover a little. Once he entered the soul-splitting platform, the heartbreak spring, and the demon forging cave, he absolutely could not take any medicine. The purpose of going there was to disperse his cultivation. If he still wanted to recover, then it would be meaningless. The demon empress' patience was obviously much better. He actually waited until the sky had turned dark before he summoned Zixieqing. He purposely gave her more time to rest. Seeing Zixieqing's arrival, the demon empress didn't beat around the bush and asked directly, Are you ready? Zixieqing nodded. I'm ready. You still have one last chance to regret. The demon empress said without any hope. I will never regret it. Zixieqing replied. It was just as the demon empress had expected. The demon empress shut her mouth, closed her eyes, and didn't say anything else. Then she scolded. He shouted, The soul-splitting platform. Heaven and earth split open. The heaven phase soul wanted to split apart, causing it to suffer for a long time. Don't come in if you have a grudge. She opened her hands, and a dark platform appeared in front of Zixieqing. The dark stone steps extended all the way to Zixieqing's feet. Thank you. Zixieqing bowed and straightened her body. She stepped lightly on the first step and paused slightly. The demon empress' eyes flashed with a faint glimmer of hope. But Zixieqing's right foot had already stepped up. Step by step, she walked up steadily. Her white robe didn't even shake at all. Finally, she reached the soul-splitting platform. The demon empress' eyes were sharp. She clapped her hands. On the soul-splitting platform, a dark flame suddenly rose and completely enveloped Zixieqing's delicate body. 3 days. Beside the lake of despair, a pitch-black hole suddenly appeared in the ice and snow. Then a human head popped out with a whoosh. Chu Yang, who was dressed in black, jumped out of the hole with a whoosh. Lake of Despair? Chu Yang recognized this place at first glance. It was mainly because the stone tablets of the two supreme martial artists, Chen Feng and Lu Yun, were too eye-catching. Then he felt that something was wrong. Why did the mountain become lower? The water level has risen. He didn't know that when he went missing, his brothers woke up to look for him. They almost tore down the entire mountain and dived down while hugging huge rocks. Over time, they actually filled half the mountain into the lake of despair. It would be strange if the water level didn't rise. Forget it, I'll go look for them first. Chu Yang looked up to the sky and roared. His voice was earth-shattering and caused an avalanche in the surroundings. I'm back. The surroundings were silent. Only the echoes in the valley could be heard. I'm back. I'm back. I'm back. I'm back. Chu Yang's figure shot down the mountain like lightning. This place wasn't far from the Ao clan and the Xie clan. Therefore, Chu Yang was rushing towards the Xie clan at the fastest speed. He didn't forget that he only had 3 months. Time was tight. Therefore, he couldn't waste any time. The first thing he wanted to do was to see how his brothers were doing. How was their cultivation? How were the 3 days? Chu Yang was surprised to find that the order of the 3 days was very good. There weren't many incidents along the way. Often, there would be people in sky blue robes walking around busily or in groups. Then, there would be people in black robes appearing and disappearing. The black-clothed people had a bamboo symbol on their clothes. There was no doubt that they were from the dark bamboo. However, who were the people in sky blue clothes? When he finally turned a mountain pass and arrived at the Xie clan, there were more and more people in sky blue clothes. Chu Yang finally stopped and grabbed one of them. I want to ask about something. What's the matter? This was a man in his 30s. He rolled his eyes and looked at Chu Yang. What organization are you from? Chu Yang asked. You didn't see this clearly? The man in blue proudly shook his clothes. This. Chu Yang was puzzled. You can't see this? What color is it? The man in blue squinted. Blue. Chu Yang was extremely puzzled. The man in blue looked as if he had seen an alien. You saw this, but you still don't know who I am? Chu Yang was puzzled. Should I know? The man in blue looked at him strangely. The two of them stared at each other. Suddenly the man roared. Brothers, this little one dares to look down on the Heavenly Armament Pavilion. Looking down on the Heavenly Armament Pavilion is looking down on Boss Chu. Men come. Teach him a lesson. Immediately, a group of men in blue came over eagerly. Chu Yang left in a hurry. Such a powerful organization. So it's the Heavenly Armament Pavilion. Damn, it seems that those guys are not idle. The Heavenly Armament Pavilion has actually developed to such a scale. However, if that little one knew that the guy he chased away was the Boss Chu he was talking about, what would he think? I wonder how they would feel about this. When he arrived at the Xie clan, Chu Yang found out that Xie Danxiong had already gone to the Ao clan more than a year ago. GMO Luokadi, Gu Duxing and the others had also gone. They had not come out yet. They had already been in seclusion for more than a year. Chu Yang hurriedly left the Xie clan and went to the Ao clan. The Ao clan also looked troubled. Those few people had entered the secret area of the Dragon clan and never came out. Chu Yang was stunned. He had gone through so much trouble to come down, but he could not see a single one of them. When he came to the place where Ao Shiyun and the others had gone in, Chu Yang hurriedly punched out. With his current cultivation, he actually broke through half of the entire mountain with one punch. There was nothing. Chu Yang was a little anxious. Damn it. It was not easy for me to come down. Next time, I'll have to wait for the Tribulation Sword fragment. These guys all went into seclusion at the same time? Once you enter the secret area of the Dragon clan, it becomes a space of its own. Unless they come out of seclusion on their own, we will not be able to find them. Ao Tianqing also looked helpless. How long do you think they will take before they come out? This is hard to say. Chu Yang left in disappointment. Before he left, he punched a few words on the mountain wall. Gu Duxing, Mo Tianji GMO, Luokadi, Aoshi and Xie Danxiong. I'm very angry. The next time I see them, I'll train them all. After he finished writing, Chu Yang asked Ao Tianqing, who was breaking out in cold sweat. Where's my junior brother Tan Tan? The Ao clan leader was shocked. How did Chu Yang become so terrifying? My God! Clan Master Ao felt his legs go soft as he looked at the dozens of miles big hole that Chu Yang had punched out. Damn it, in the future, the Ao clan could move in to avoid the heat during the hot summer. I haven't seen him. After the battle at the Lake of Despair, he disappeared. Ao Tianqing said. Disappeared. Chu Yang was depressed. It turned out that he could not see anyone when he came down this time. Speechless, he bade farewell to Ao Tianqing. Chu Yang only said, Then I'll come back in 2 months. With a whoosh he disappeared. He rushed to the lower 3 heavens at full speed. In the lower 3 heavens, there was still an emperor's wife waiting for him. There was also someone he had never met before. Speaking of which, he had not truly met his wife either. Damn it, what was this? Chu Yang's speed was extremely fast. He entered the passage again and went all the way to the lower 3 heavens. When he came out, it was already dawn. Stepping on the morning dew, Chu Yang rode the wind and finally arrived at Iron Cloud Citadel, just as the sun rose. Returning to this place, Chu Yang was filled with emotions for a moment, thinking of the battles of wits and courage in the past and the bloody battles here. For a moment, he actually felt like a fleeting cloud and a pipe dream. Strolling into Iron Cloud Citadel, he saw that Iron Cloud Citadel was extremely prosperous. In addition, the entire city was almost 3 times larger than before. Chu Yang spent a lot of effort before he finally found the original location of Butian Pavilion. Butian Pavilion was still Butian Pavilion. Chu Yang fluttered over and was immediately stopped by 2 black-clothed imperial bodyguards. "Stop. Who is it?" Chu Yang asked with a smile. "May I ask, who is Chung Ong and Chun Yutong here?" "What? You are looking for us 2 pavilion masters? Just you?" The guards were furious and said with a dark face. Chu Yang was not angry at all. He said, "Please report that there is someone with the surname Chu, called Chu Yang, who wishes to see, the 2 pavilion masters." The second one was even worse, seeking monthly votes. Chapter 1185. Chu Yang didn't expect Chung Ong and Chun Yutong to actually be promoted to pavilion masters after he left. Pavilion masters? Did this guy bump his butt against the seats when he was sitting on them? A knowing smile appeared on Chu Yang's face. "Let the fun begin. You wish to see our pavilion masters?" The 2 guards sized him up from head to toe. With their nostrils up, they snorted disdainfully and shook their heads. "Line up over there. Line up." Chu Yang was taken aback. Why didn't it work after he said his name? Are they rebelling? Nonsense. You want to see our pavilion masters without lining up? The guards looked at Chu Yang as if he were a country bumpkin. You must have just come out from the mountains, right? Ah. Chu Yang stared blankly. What the heck? I actually need to line up to see Chung Ong. Just look at it. The 2 guards laughed arrogantly. Do you think you can see our pavilion masters just because you want to? Do you see? As they spoke, they gestured to the side with their mouths. Stunned, Chu Yang turned to look. Sure enough, there was a square at the side. In the square, there was a statue of a man 100 feet tall, shining with golden light all over. This statue was really majestic and full of murderous intent. It was obviously made of gold, but it was painted black gold. The sword in its hand shone with golden light, as if it wanted to split the sky in half. A black cape fluttered behind it. 1 foot was on the ground, while the other was raised and stepped forward. It looked like it was ready to step through mountains of swords and seas of fire. There was a hideous and terrifying mask on its face, as if the king of hell had just emerged from the netherworld. It was eerie and frightening. There were quite a number of people standing and waiting under the statue. Most of them were actually wearing official robes. From the looks of it, they weren't of low quality. Do you see that? The guard lectured. So many court officials have to line up here to see the 2 pavilion masters. You actually want to see them the moment you arrive? Chu Yang rubbed his nose and asked curiously, who is this statue? It looks so powerful. The guard's eyes widened at once. He stuttered. Are you still from this world? You actually don't know our Minister Chu? Minister Chu? Chu Yang was stunned. Yes, Minister Chu, the bearded imperial bodyguard said. This is the statue of King of Hell Chu whose name shakes the world. Butian Pavilion's only Minister Chu, and Iron Cloud Empire's King Chu, who is on par with the Emperor. Chu Yang was dumbstruck. So it's King of Hell Chu, Minister Chu, Prince Chu. Since you are so young and honest, and your surname is also Chu, I will tell you about Minister Chu's power. Listen carefully, you country bumpkin. Imperial bodyguard Da, who had obviously been standing guard for a long time, and was bored out of his mind. So he had become a chatterbox. It was rare to meet an idiot who didn't even know who Minister Chu was. Minister Chu took control of Butian Pavilion, and in just one day, he caught tens of thousands of spies in Iron Cloud. He cleaned up thousands of officials, and laid the foundation of Iron Cloud Empire that will never be uprooted. When the current emperor was still a grand emperor, he and Minister Chu became sworn brothers. After that, Minister Chu went to Great Zhao alone, with the strength of one person, sweeping away Great Zhao's Golden Horse Riders department. Then, He fought a bloody battle and broke through the encirclement of Great Zhao's 30 million soldiers. He fought non-stop for 18,500 miles. He killed more than 10 million enemies. He killed until the clear sky turned blood red. Then, he returned to Iron Cloud safe and sound. He immediately organized a decisive battle with the #1 traitor, Di Wuqing Rou on the battlefield. Imperial bodyguard De whose saliva flew everywhere. Xu Yang was dumbfounded. He opened his mouth wide. Ah, so awesome. Of course. Damn, don't interrupt. I haven't finished yet. Imperial bodyguard De who continued. In that decisive battle, Iron Cloud was at a disadvantage. But when Minister Chu arrived, he reversed the situation in an instant. He was dressed in black with a mask on his face. He was wielding a 30 feet long thunder and lightning saber. He was riding a chasing wind lightning horse. In just one breath, he rushed into the enemy's formation. The enemy was shocked. They said, King of Hell Chu is here. Everyone run. It was too late. Since Minister Chu had arrived, how could he let them escape? Therefore Minister Chu swung his saber. With one slash, the entire mountain peak was cut in half. After the battle, according to the statistics of the Military Affairs Department, there were 787 people killed. A total of 7,887 people were beheaded, and 13,415 people were severed at the waist. One slash, just one slash, and more than 20 million people died a violent death. Ah, you did not calculate incorrectly. 20,000 people were killed by Minister Chu. More than 1,000 people were scared to death by that one slash. After the battle, 80 million soldiers of Great Zhao died a violent death. Thus our Iron Cloud Empire was conquered in one battle. Minister Chu's contributions are higher than the sky and deeper than the sea. Chu Yang's hair stood on end as he listened. This does not seem to be talking about me. Why is it getting more and more confusing? Not to mention then even now to kill 20,000 people with one slash. It seems that I am still far from that. Unfortunately, such a peerless hero was punished by the heavens because he killed too many people. Not long after the battle, he became seriously ill and passed away. Before he left, he sighed and said, This old man has killed more than 70 million people in his life. Today, I have suffered the wrath of the heavens. I have no regrets even if I die. Finished speaking, I can rest in peace. Chu Yang's whole body was covered in goosebumps. He could not help but shiver. More than 70 million? He suddenly felt that something was wrong. Old man? This Minister Chu is an old man? De Hu stared and said, What do you think? Chu Yang was a little dizzy. He covered his temples with his hands and groaned. What happened after that? After that, His Majesty the Emperor recognized his merits and conferred him the title of king equal to one word. Outside of Butian Pavilion, he gathered 100,000 taels of gold and erected a statue of the minister for the world to admire. His Majesty said, Butian Pavilion was established because of Minister Chu. Minister Chu also died for Iron Cloud. Since the beginning of Butian Pavilion, there has only been one minister. After thousands of years, Butian Pavilion will not have a second minister. Therefore, from then on, the leader of Butian Pavilion became a pavilion master. De Hu's saliva flew everywhere as he finally finished speaking. Chu Yang was already dizzy from listening to all this. He felt as if there were golden claps of thunder above his head. He finally understood what hearsay was and what it meant to be fearful of gossip. He felt a pushing force on his back. He was already being pushed toward the statue of Minister Chu. Go over there and wait. At this moment, people shouted and horses neighed. In the distance, a group of honor guards with dazzling sabers and spears could be seen. Their armor shone brightly as they strode over. The men were like tigers, and the horses were like dragons. What a valiant group of soldiers! The one in the lead rode on his horse valiantly and spiritedly. His eyes were narrowed, and his expression was cold. A wisp of goatee hung high in front of his chest. He rode on his horse just like that. His hands were not holding the reins. Just like that, his hands were tucked into his sleeves. From head to toe, he exuded an aura of being 1,000 miles away. Along the way, immediately, someone among the officials shouted, Pavilion Master Chung. Pavilion Master, Lord Pavilion Master. I have something to report. Pavilion Master Chung. I have an important matter to discuss with you. Chung Ang's face was as red as a jujube. His eyelids drooped, and he didn't look askance at all. When he reached the door, the horse stopped automatically. An official had already rushed over and knelt down under the saddle. With both hands on the ground, he straightened his back. He said obsequiously, "Pavilion Master, please get off the horse." Only then did Chung Ang raise his eyebrows. He glanced at this person and said dispassionately, "Lord Han, I don't think this is very appropriate. It's my honor." This Lord Han nodded like a lapdog, revealing an extremely obsequious smile. Chung Ang nodded dispassionately. "All right." With a tilt of his body, he stepped accurately on the spine of this Lord Han. Then, he slowly dismounted from the horse. The corners of Chu Yang's mouth twitched. This Chung Ang. He actually became like this. He's acting like a tyrant. He's already a martial king. Yet he still has to step on someone else when he dismounts? After Chung Ang got off the horse, he shouted, "Guards!" At once 2 guards in black ran over. They bowed and stood at attention. "Pavilion Master, take this Lord Han to the authorities and remove his crown. Throw him into jail, and start an investigation immediately." Chung Ang didn't even raise his head or open his eyes. He actually knelt in front of me and asked me to get off the horse. This kind of person will do anything to achieve his goals. If he becomes an official, he will definitely cause trouble. We must investigate carefully. The guards acknowledged the order. They picked up Lord Han, who was already trembling all over, and whose eyes had rolled back and left. Along the way, cries of "innocent" could be heard continuously. Everyone knew that this Lord Han was finished. With his hands behind his back, Chung Ang stood in front of the door of Butian Pavilion. His eyes swept across the crowd authoritatively. He said dispassionately, "Everyone, is there anyone who has any objections to my actions?" At once, everyone was singing his praises. Pavilion Master Chung is right. Pavilion Master is wise. Pavilion Master's eyes are as sharp as torches. He's finally found the black sheep today. Chung Ang stroked his beard and smiled, immensely pleased with himself. At this moment someone said, "Pavilion Master Chung, how awe-inspiring." Chung Ang snorted and looked over from the corner of his eyes. What? Before he could finish his sentence, his words were stuck in his throat. His mouth was wide open like that of a dying catfish, unable to close. His gaze met a young man in black standing there with his hands behind his back. He was looking at him with a half-smile. The expression on his face and in his eyes were thought-provoking. Chung Ang was stunned. By this time, the crowd was already in an uproar. Everyone was scolding this rude fellow. Where did this bastard come from? He really doesn't know the rules. Beat him to death. Throw his corpse into the wilderness. Chop him into pieces. Exterminate his clan. However, by this time, Pavilion Master Cheng's face had already turned into a dyehouse. It turned from rosy to pale white, then to bright red, then to a waxy yellow, and then to a ghastly white again. Droplets of sweat dripped down. Then, amidst the angry curses of the crowd, Pavilion Master Cheng rushed over as if his butt was on fire. He actually bent his back and took small, quick steps. There was surprise and flattery on his face, as well as some disbelief. He rushed all the way to Chu Yang. He paused for a moment, looked up, and suddenly burst into tears. "You Lord! Lord, it's really you!" "Ah!" The authoritative Pavilion Master fell to his knees with a thud. He hugged the legs of the man in black with both hands, tears and snot flowing out of his eyes. Everyone was dumbstruck at this moment. Chapter 1186. Looking at Pavilion Master Chung, who was kneeling on the ground, hugging the other party's leg, and bawling his eyes out like a child. Everyone was collectively petrified. Everyone's mouths were agape, feeling as if their eyeballs were about to pop out. Their eyeballs were bouncing around. Who was Pavilion Master Chung? Pavilion Master Chung was the Pavilion Master of the Heaven Mending Pavilion, which was independent of the government. He supervised all the officials in the world. He was second only to one person, and above everyone else. Even the flying generals of Long Chingfei, Tai Long Chung, and the Iron Royal Uncle had to be courteous to Pavilion Master Chung. Even when Pavilion Master Chung met the current emperor, He wouldn't be so fawning and ingratiating, much less kneeling on the ground and bawling like a child. Who exactly was this young man? The eyes of the two guards at the door were so wide that they were about to pop out. Oh my God, what kind of ferocious person was this? And I actually shut this ferocious person out just now. With a helpless look on his face, Chu Yang said softly, "Get up quickly. What are you doing like this?" "I won't get up. I won't get up." Pavilion Master Chun cried and yelled, his voice choked and extremely sorrowful. "Sob, sob, sob. I won't get up even if I die." Everyone was completely petrified. With a thud, an elderly official couldn't take such a strong shock anymore. Blood rushed to his head, and his heart stopped beating. His eyes rolled back, and he collapsed stiffly onto the ground. There was a moment of panic. Someone hurried over to carry this old official away for treatment. Suddenly, there was a commotion at the main entrance. A lean figure dashed out at lightning speed. "What's going on?" It was the other pavilion master of the heaven-mending pavilion, Chun Yutong. "Pavilion Master Chun." Pavilion Master Chun strode out quickly. The first thing he saw was Pavilion Master Chung kneeling in front of someone, crying bitterly. His eyes widened the moment he took a closer look. Then he rubbed his eyes, and then rubbed them again. Then, he shook his head violently, turned around, and knocked his head against the wall. With a loud boom, a hole was smashed into the wall. Then, he turned around and stared blankly at that young man. As he stared, his eyes filled with tears. Then he buried his head in his hands and bawled loudly. This set of movements was like a person who suddenly had an epileptic abscess and a mole. Then with tears in her eyes, she rushed over and knelt down with a plop. She hugged the other leg of the young man and cried loudly, "You lord! My lord! You're back, you're back!" A strange sound came from everyone's mouth. Someone couldn't bear it and fainted. The two imperial bodyguards at the entrance felt their bodies go soft. 2 puddles of mud slid down the doorpost. Their eyes were staring blankly, and their heads were sweating profusely. Heavens! This time, I really have to go back and see the doctor. Was I scared out of my wits today? Get up quickly. Chu Yang frowned. I came here secretly. You guys! Hearing this, Chungong immediately jumped up and roared. Someone come! Detain everyone at the scene. Don't even let a rat's hair go. With a whoosh, hundreds of heaven-mending pavilion's martial artists immediately formed a large circle and captured everyone within the circle. Take them into the courtyard. Including yourselves, no one is allowed to come out. Chungong waved his hand. Executioners, get ready. If necessary, kill everyone to silence them. Everyone jumped in fright at once. Chu Yang was also shocked. Wait, it's not that serious. Then detain them first. Chungong immediately changed his order. Then, he and Chun Yutong bowed respectfully and invited Chu Yang in like a bodhisattva. Their waists were bent so low that their foreheads were almost touching the ground. Chun Yutong walked behind them and asked the 2 imperial bodyguards in a low voice, "What did this guest say just now?" One of the imperial bodyguards was sweating profusely. Even his eyes were a little dazed. He stammered, He, his surname is Chu, his name is Chu Yang. He requests to see the 2 pavilion masters." Chun Yutong nodded and waved his hand. "Take these 2 people down. Detain them. Without my orders, don't let them go." Since the minister said that his whereabouts must be kept secret, then not even the slightest bit of information must be leaked. If necessary, these 1,000-odd people would all be killed to silence them. We're innocent. Pavilion Master. The 2 imperial bodyguards hurriedly knelt down and begged, but a few martial artists had already come over and tied them up and brought them in. Chun Yutong waved his hand and summoned the imperial bodyguards who were changing shifts. If a single word of what happened today is leaked, the 2 of you can kill your entire families first, then commit suicide. The 2 new imperial bodyguards were scared out of their wits. What the fuck? It's not even time to change shifts yet, and they're already changing us. They were just feeling aggrieved when they heard such words. What happened today? This sentence was a bit too fierce. In front of Butian Pavilion, peace was restored. At Butian Pavilion, the 3 people who had reunited after a long time were deeply moved. Chu Yang spent the strength of a camel to stop these 2 old subordinates from crying. The 3 of them exchanged pleasantries for a long time. Chen Yutong and Chen Yutong had a lot to say. After a long while, Chu Yang pretended to suddenly remember something and brought up the main topic. I heard that His Majesty has an heir? Is it a Grand Empress? Cheng'ang said excitedly. Yes, it's the Empress. She's called Tai Yang. She's smart and cute. It seems that our Iron Cloud has produced another wise ruler. Tai Yang. Murmuring this name, Chu Yang's heart became even more certain. However, looking at this name, it didn't seem too good. It seemed that Tai Butian actually wanted to leave her son in Iron Cloud? Chu Yang pondered. It's a pity that the Empress Sai. After giving birth to the Empress, she passed away Sai. Cheng'ang and Chen Yutong naturally knew Wu Qianqian. They also knew that Miss Qianqian was in love with Minister Chu back then, but Minister Chu never accepted her. Now when mentioning this matter, they were also a little cautious. Chu Yang sighed. Yes, it's a pity. Both of them felt that Minister Chu's reaction was a little too calm. However, this was a private matter between the two of them. Moreover, Wu Qianqian was already the Empress and had already passed away. It didn't seem right to mention it again. After chatting for a long time, Chu Yang finally confirmed one thing after another. Tai Butian really didn't have the intention to acknowledge him. Moreover, her son also didn't have the intention to let him acknowledge his ancestors. This matter had made Minister Chu furious. This be *tch. Chu Yang slammed the table heavily and scolded through gritted teeth. See if I don't teach her a lesson. Cheng'ang and Chen Yutong looked at each other in dismay, not knowing what was going on. We seem to have been talking about His Majesty just now. Why did Minister Chu suddenly scold *th? *th, who is it? Cheng'ang cautiously asked. May I ask the minister, who is this immortal, shameful woman? What does it have to do with you? Chu Yang's nostrils flared fiercely. He was furious. You too. How much have your cultivations improved since I left? Obviously he wanted to change the target. It's over. The two of them groaned inwardly. Go practice. Minister Chu kicked the table away. Look at how lazy the two of you are. The fat on your body can be boiled into oil enough to feed an entire army. Each of you, carry a 500-kilogram rock on your back, and run 100 rounds around Butian Pavilion. The two pavilion masters' faces turned bitter at once. Now that they were back and reunited after a long separation, they were immediately going to be beaten and scolded. With bitter expressions, the two pavilion masters went to receive their punishment. Then, everyone in Butian Pavilion discovered something so strange that their jaws dropped. The two pavilion masters, who usually lived like princes, were each carrying a huge rock the size of a small mountain on their backs. They were sweating profusely and running like old cows round and round at night. Cheng'ang prepared a sumptuous banquet to welcome Chu Yang back. Chu Yang pondered for an entire afternoon. He thought so hard that his head hurt, but he still couldn't come up with a solution. He sat at the banquet with a dark face. The two of them carefully accompanied him, their hearts beating wildly. Old Chen, why don't you drink less? It's your turn to attend morning court tomorrow morning. Cheng'ang reminded Chen Yutong. It's nothing. When Minister Chu is back, I'll drink with him even if His Majesty has to behead me. Chen Yutong replied heroically, his hands on his back. What? Morning court? Chu Yang was startled. He turned and asked. Yes. Since when did Butian Pavilion start holding morning court? Chu Yang frowned. The two pavilion masters looked at each other, both feeling that this question wasn't easy to answer. Will His Majesty attend morning court as well? Chu Yang asked with a frown. Of course His Majesty will attend. Cheng'ang was very puzzled by the minister's words. If His Majesty didn't attend, how could it be called morning court? That's great. Chu Yang nodded and smiled. Chen Yutong, don't worry and drink. I'll attend the morning court tomorrow. You'll go? The two pavilion masters' faces lit up at once. Then realization dawned on them. Minister Chu wants to give His Majesty a surprise? Chu Yang grinned. Yes, a surprise. I want to give His Majesty a big surprise. Minister Chu had emphasized the word pleasant surprise in his speech. Even his expression was a little sinister. Cheng'ang and Chen Yutong were a little unsettled. Minister Chu couldn't have come back to assassinate His Majesty, could he? That shouldn't be possible. The two of them took a closer look and saw that apart from the sinister expression on Minister Chu's face, there was actually a lewd smile at the corners of his mouth. The two of them shuddered. They looked at each other with tacit understanding and lowered their heads to drink and eat. Don't talk while eating and don't talk while sleeping. This was an old adage. Dawn. Chu Yang was dressed in a black robe, looking drunk. He wore the traditional mask of Butian Pavilion on his face and sat in a large palanquin with 8 carriers. Amidst the sounds of eat, eat, eat of the palanquin bearers, he walked majestically all the way to the morning court. The morning court was held in the Heavenly Sun Hall. It sounded like His Majesty had changed it after he ascended the throne. Upon hearing this name, Chu Yang felt somewhat better. When he reached the front of the hall, he saw that the military officials were already waiting in groups. Chu Yang coughed and walked in with a majestic gait. Instantly, he brought with him the smell of alcohol. All the military officials in the hall looked askance. But this was the pavilion master of Butian Pavilion. Who dared to say a word about him? After a moment, the sound of ceremonial guards rang out. Melodious music of musical instruments rang out. A sharp voice shouted, "His Majesty the Emperor has arrived." Pa! Everyone hurried forward to welcome him. Chu Yang looked up and saw a bright yellow ceremonial guard slowly approaching from afar. On the palanquin was a person dressed in bright yellow clothes and wearing a crown. His face was like jade, and his eyes were calm and dignified. Naturally, he carried with him an unparalleled aura of power that could conquer the world in his hands, the mountains and rivers in his heart, the wind and clouds in his grasp, and the nation in his chest. The sovereign descends to the world. Chapter 1187. Amidst the cheers of the officials, Tai Butian slowly got down from the imperial chariot. Her eyes swept across the crowd and she said softly, "Rise." The officials thanked her and stood up. But there was one person who didn't kneel. Chu Yang leaned against a pillar in the main hall and looked at Tai Butian. He snorted inwardly, "You want me to kneel to you? Humph." However, after not seeing him for almost 2 years, this young emperor had obviously changed from the past. He was still young and handsome. He was still tall and straight. Compared to the past, he was more graceful and less immature. His every move was already natural. Tai Butian didn't think that Chu Yang, who was pretending to be Pavilion Master Chung, didn't kneel and greet her. The officials were also used to it. It turned out that the pavilion masters of Butian Pavilion had this privilege. Once they entered the Golden Hall, they represented Minister Chu and didn't have to kneel. Who in Iron Cloud didn't respect King of Helchu? Under the imperial family's relentless promotion, Minister Chu had already become the savior of the entire Iron Cloud. Not kneeling in front of the emperor? What was wrong with that? That was only right. Even if it was only on behalf of Minister Chu, they definitely couldn't lower their heads to anyone. Tai Butian strode forward, getting nearer and nearer. Chu Yang was suddenly at a loss. This was clearly a man. Was it really a woman? Minister Chu looked at Tai Butian and sized her up carefully. The more he looked, the more suspicious he became. She had an Adam's apple. She didn't have a chest. Her waist wasn't very thin, and her hips weren't round either, apart from the lack of facial hair. No matter how one looked at her, she was a man. Chu Yang muttered inwardly, "Wu Qianqian definitely wouldn't lie to me." But what was going on now? Could it be that this B*TCH had been pretending to be a man for too long? Had half of him also become a man? Minister Chu sized her up with a sneaky look. Tai Butian walked to the front of the officials. Suddenly, her eyes swept over them and she said gently, "Prime Minister Wang, I heard that you're sick. Why aren't you resting at home? I wanted to visit you after the morning court assembly today, but I didn't expect to see you here. Prime Minister is already advanced in age. You need to take care of yourself." Prime Minister Wang said gratefully, "Your Majesty, you are so concerned about the affairs of the state, but you still remember my illness. I am so grateful. How could I dare to delay the affairs of the state?" Tai Butian sighed. He said, "Yesterday, we have already prepared the corresponding medicine and prescription. Later, after the morning court session, I'll send an imperial physician to the Prime Minister's residence to treat the Prime Minister." The monarch was so compassionate towards his subordinates that all the officials felt the same way. All of them looked at Prime Minister Wang with envy. Some of their eyes were already wet. Tai Butian was calm and amiable. Along the way, she exchanged a few pleasantries with a few officials, making them feel as if they were bathed in a spring breeze. The morning court assembly had not yet begun, but the atmosphere of loyalty and patriotism was already thick and strong. Tai Butian was walking forward. Suddenly he smelled a strong smell of alcohol. She couldn't help but frown slightly. Following the smell, she saw the pavilion master of Butian Pavilion, dressed in black, leaning against a pillar in the corridor, looking like he was still drunk. The two pavilion masters of Heaven Mending Pavilion had always taken turns to attend court. Yesterday it was Chang'ong. Of course it was Chen Yutong today. Pavilion Master Chung, were you drunk last night? The emperor asked jokingly. Tai Butian had always treasured these two old subordinates that Chu Yang had left behind. Otherwise, he wouldn't have given them so much preferential treatment. Yes, I was drunk, Chu Yang said vaguely. He thought to himself, drunk from anger. Tai Butian turned and said, give Pavilion Master Ching a bowl of hangover soup. Immediately an attendant agreed. Not long after, a bowl of thick hangover soup was brought over. Chu Yang naturally wouldn't stand on ceremony. He took it and gulped it down. This kind of treatment made the eyes of all the military officials green with envy. Butian Pavilion was indeed impressive. Tai Butian finally walked to the dragon throne. Facing the south, he sat down slowly. After a round of formalities, the court assembly began. Chu Yang shrank to the side and listened. The more he listened, the more bored he became. It was nothing more than a drought in the east, a flood in the west, bandits in the north, a lack of officials in the south. Which one was appointed? Which one was appointed? Which one was corrupt? Which one was praised for benefiting the people? Other than that, it was about the impeachment of officials. The censors and censors came out one by one to make their statements. Then, there would be rebuttals from the opposing side. Then there would be a war of words between both sides. And so on and so forth. Chu Yang couldn't help but yawn as he listened. Thankfully he wasn't the emperor. If he had to face these things every day, he might have long had a mental breakdown. But Tai Butian sat upright on the dragon throne. His attitude was serious as he reviewed each and every one of them, and replied seriously. He was extremely serious. He gave a clear answer to each and every one of them. There were only a few items that were suppressed. With the emperor being so serious and serious, how would the officials dare to be negligent? Of course, they were even more energized. They were afraid that His Majesty would catch a glimpse of their negligence. If that happened, they would be in for a great deal of joy. This was also the main reason why the efficiency of the Iron Cloud Empire's officials was especially high. The emperor was smart, diligent, and discerning. The officials didn't dare to be negligent. And as they went down, they became stricter and stricter. Even as a first-grade official, he had to work day and night. How could the people below him not be more efficient? And so the results were very obvious. Only after 3 hours did these trivial matters come to an end. Immediately after, they began to study the border matters and the problems of governance. Only then did everyone heave a sigh of relief. And at this time, the sun actually shone into the hall at a slanted angle. Finally, Tai Butian received a cup of tea from a palace maid and took a sip. Then she asked dispassionately, Pavilion Master Chen, during this period of time, how's the matter regarding the supervision of all the officials in the world coming along? Chu Yang was drowsy. Hearing this, he hurriedly stood up straight. Tai Butian smiled and said, Butian Pavilion has always been very effective in rectifying the governance of the officials. Some time ago, we rectified the 2 directions in the east and south respectively. There were some problems that even I was shocked by. Counting the days, the report from the northwest should have arrived by now. Chu Yang wiped his saliva and stared blankly for a while. Then he said, about this I forgot. He didn't disguise these few words, but used his original accent. Instantly the crowd was in an uproar. Everyone's gazes were as sharp as knives. This bastard, relying on Her Majesty's favor. How dare he be so rude? On the other side, an official with a head full of white hair was furious. It was that Prime Minister Wang. he said loudly and shakily. Pavilion Master Chun, what do you mean by this? Her Majesty trusts you, and that's why she entrusted you with the important task of supervising all the officials in the world. How dare you be so inattentive? This is a matter of national importance. He was so angry that he was shaking uncontrollably, unable to speak. Someone at the side, perhaps trying to smooth things over or add fuel to the fire, said lightly, Pavilion Master Chun is drunk. It's not surprising that he forgot. Why is Prime Minister Wang so angry? Prime Minister Wang was even more furious. How can a matter of national importance be ruined by alcohol? No matter how prestigious Butian Pavilion is, it can't be so ridiculous. It was obvious that this group of people led by Prime Minister Wang was an important member of the opposition to Butian Pavilion. However, when Tai Butian heard Chu Yang's words, her body trembled slightly. Two dazzling lights suddenly flashed across her eyes. She stared intently at this Pavilion Master Chun, who exuded a languid aura and reeked of alcohol. She said slowly, Pavilion Master Chun, what did you say just now? I didn't understand. Everyone could tell from her words that Her Majesty seemed to be restraining something with all her might. Everyone was guessing that in the next moment, the heavens would probably shake and blood would flow like a river. This monarch was very decisive in killing people. Even if you, Chen Yutong, were a pavilion master of Butian Pavilion, it was ultimately because of King of Hell Chu that you were able to attain such a position. Now that you're courting death, you can't blame anyone else. The hall was so silent that one could hear a pin drop. Although everyone looked serious on the surface, they were actually gloating. Cough cough. Chu Yang coughed and cleared his throat. He raised his head and looked at Tai Butian with clear eyes. He said slowly, Your Majesty, you didn't hear me clearly? Then I'll say it again. What I said just now was, Well, I forgot about that. This sentence was practically adding fuel to the fire. Too arrogant, too presumptuous. This was not the attitude a subject should have when speaking to Her Majesty. At once, the hall was in an uproar. All the officials were filled with rage. All of them wanted Pavilion Master Chen Yutong to be removed from his post and investigated. They wanted him to be thrown into the imperial prison and executed by 1,000 cuts. Everyone jumped out, all of them very agitated, especially Prime Minister Wang and the others. They were so angry that smoke was coming out of their 7 orifices. They all went forward and knelt down. We implore Your Majesty to immediately execute this fatherless traitor. Chen Yutong's disrespect to Your Majesty is a capital offense. No matter what, he cannot be pardoned. From the beginning to the end, after Tai Butian heard Chu Yang's words, she suddenly froze on the spot. Her eyes stared fixedly at Chu Yang's black-robed figure. Her hands gripped the armrests of the dragon throne so tightly that the veins on her hands were popping out. Her entire body was trembling slightly. This voice was not Chen Yutong's. This voice was his. When her eyes met the clear gaze behind the mask, Tai Butian's mind buzzed, and she only felt waves of dizziness. After a long while, she finally closed her eyes weakly and waved her hands. Court dismissed. Pavilion Master Chen, stay. Your Majesty. All the officials exclaimed. They never expected Her Majesty to be so angry that she actually dismissed the court session immediately. Your Majesty, please take care of your body. I said dismiss the court session. Tai Butian slammed the table. All of you leave. The heavenly might shook the entire hall. All the officials didn't dare to say a word. Even Prime Minister Wang, who had been kneeling for a long time just now, hurriedly got up. At this point, they definitely couldn't go against Her Majesty. They would really die. All of you leave as well. Tai Butian shouted to the palace maids and servants. Leave together with the guards. Yes. In an instant, only 2 people were left in the hall. The current emperor, Tai Butian, and this fake pavilion Master Chen. Chapter 1188. Chu Yang opened and closed his mouth. A few words circled around in his heart, but he still swallowed them back in the end. He smiled and said, Your Majesty's eyes are really sharp. I was just joking with Your Majesty. I didn't expect Your Majesty to recognize me with just one sentence. Tai Butian laughed. Her voice trembled somewhat uncontrollably. Chu Yang's eyes were fixed on the changes in Tai Butian's expression. Her eyes seemed to have reddened, but they returned to normal in an extremely short period of time. The agitation in the depths of her eyes was still uncontrollable, but she could already hide her emotions very well. A long career as an emperor, coupled with the difficulties and hardships in the early days, had already tempered this intelligent woman's nerves as strong as iron. Especially when she was wearing this imperial robe, there were very few things that could make her lose her composure. It was already the first time she had been so agitated just now. Chu Yang smiled and reached out to take off his mask. Looking at this face that had appeared in her dreams countless times, Tai Butian's heart ached. She almost wanted to rush up to him, hug him tightly, and tell him how much she missed him. But this crazy thought was immediately forcibly suppressed by herself. What was Chu Yang thinking now? Did he know or not? Was he purely here to visit a friend? Or, Tai Butian's heart was extremely complicated. For a moment, thousands of thoughts flitted across her mind. Suddenly her heart was in a mess. At this moment, she actually didn't dare to face Chu Yang. Opposite her, Chu Yang was also forcing himself to calm down. He was also thinking constantly, what should I do? She wasn't going to make it clear herself. Besides, she didn't intend to let him know about the child either. Should I make it clear now? Or should I beat around the bush first? Or should I use other methods? If I really make this girl anxious, the child will be even more hopeless. Minister Chu's heart was also in a mess. For a moment, both of them were actually stunned. After a long while, Tai Butian looked away without leaving a trace. She laughed heartily and said, Minister Chu, haven't you already transformed into a divine dragon and left the heaven? Why did you think of it today? Are you here to visit this old friend of mine? She turned her head again, her eyes somewhat playful. Or are you just passing by? Just visiting me in passing? Chu Yang also smiled in a relaxed manner and said, Your Majesty, you must be joking. I've come to visit an old friend. So, I've obviously made a special trip. How can it be that I'm just passing by? Wouldn't that be letting down the feelings between us? Although Chu Yang's tone was very flat, and he didn't deliberately emphasize it, when Tai Butian heard the words the feelings between us, her heart was filled with emotions. His heart still skipped a beat. She blurted out, the feelings between us. Chu Yang spread out his hands and said, His Majesty, it can't be after he becomes the emperor. Have you forgotten about your old friend? You've even forgotten the many times we've gone through fire and water together? Tai Butian chuckled. A trace of embarrassment flashed across his eyes as he said, Minister Chu really knows how to joke. Haha, could it be that in Minister Chu's heart, I am the kind of person who would turn hostile? Chu Yang smiled mischievously. Your Majesty's words reminded me of a saying, a story about forgetting one's feelings. Tai Butian smiled and asked, What story? Chu Yang smiled. He shook his head. Forget it. It's a little indecent, especially in front of you, the ruler of a country. It's a little inappropriate. Tai Butian burst into laughter. Since when did Minister Chu start to talk about propriety in front of me? But this story was brought up by my topic. How can I not listen to it? Chu Yang asked. Is your Majesty sure you want to listen? Tai Butian nodded heavily. I must. Chu Yang said helplessly. Since that's the case, I'll tell your Majesty. It's said that there was a patrolling soldier from the city guards who took a fancy to a popular lady in a brothel. Even in his dreams he wanted to get close to her. He started off with a story. Tai Butian blushed slightly and couldn't help but laugh. You Chu Yang, it's been so long since we last met. You're still so unruly, always telling dirty stories. Chu Yang said. In that case, does your Majesty still want to listen? Tai Butian laughed heartily and said, Why not? You and I are both men. Could it be that you think we are shy? The Emperor's words, whether it was her or Chu Yang, sounded like he was trying to cover up something that only made it more conspicuous. Chu Yang smiled meaningfully. That's right. We're both men. There's indeed nothing to worry about. He continued. However, although this soldier took a fancy to her, he himself was very poor. And there's no money in places like brothels. He probably couldn't get in. What should we do then? Chu Yang frowned and said, Finally, he came up with an idea. Every time he patrolled, he would send a bouquet of flowers to the popular lady, but he wouldn't show his face. He patrolled once a day, and he sent flowers continuously for 2 months. Tai Butian smiled and said, "This soldier is really thoughtful." "Yes," Chu Yang said. Finally, after 2 months, the popular lady was moved by his sincerity and specially asked him to meet her. The soldier dressed up and went. After he went, the two of them fell in love with each other. The man wasn't a ruler, and the woman wasn't a chaste woman. Thus, they had an affair and hit it off. Together, they went for an affair. Tai Butian's face was a little red. She laughed dryly and said, "I still don't understand what this has to do with forgetting feelings." Chu Yang said, "I'm not done yet." The two of them hooked up. The soldier had no money, and the lady didn't want it either. Thus they met every day. One day, after their rendezvous, the soldier returned to the camp and received orders to crack down on the brothels. And the target of the soldier's team was the brothel he frequented. That popular lady was also the target. "What should we do?" Tai Butian asked jokingly. Chu Yang continued to narrate with a straight face. "But this soldier is really a ruthless person. He carried out the order meticulously and personally led his men to wipe out the entire brothel in one fell swoop. That girl was one of them. Moreover, it had only been less than 4 hours since he had finished fooling around." "Why?" Tai Butian asked in surprise. "Doesn't he like that lady a lot? Why did he do that?" Chu Yang said with a straight face. This popular lady also asked the same question. She looked at him with grief and indignation and asked, "Are your feelings for me fake? You were still on my bed just now, and now you're here to catch me?" "Yes." How did this bastard soldier answer? Tai Butian was even more puzzled. Chu Yang still had a straight face. He said, "That soldier said, when I took off my pants, I had feelings for you. But now that I've already put on my pants, where would I have feelings for you?" "What feelings?" Tai Butian couldn't help but smile with a little blush. "Although this soldier is heartless, he's also a wonderful person." She suddenly said angrily, "You said just now that I thought of this matter. Do you mean that I'm this soldier?" Chu Yang blinked. "I didn't say that. Your Majesty said it yourself." Tai Butian couldn't help but blush a little. She was also a little annoyed. She thought of how she had treated his injuries back then. So, he pretended that nothing had happened. This seemed to be somewhat similar to the soldiers in the stories, but with a different approach to achieve the same result. She thought of Chu Yang's words. "When I took off my pants, of course I had feelings for you. But now that I've already put on my pants, where would I have feelings for you? Where would I have feelings for you?" She couldn't help but feel a little guilty. Back then when she saved him, didn't she need to take off her pants? Besides, since she was willing to do so, of course she had feelings for him. If she didn't have feelings for him, why would she save him like that? But, after she put on her pants, it seemed that she had suppressed that matter. This, no matter how she thought about it. Why did she feel that this guy was talking about her? Her Majesty was a little guilty after all. When she thought of this, besides blushing, she was also doubtful. Could it be that he already knew? When she thought of this, she couldn't help but sneak a glance at Chu Yang. She saw that this guy was beaming with joy. She relaxed and thought to herself, "Looks like this guy just told a dirty joke." Coughing, the emperor said, "Well, Minister Chu's joke has also sounded the alarm for me. Some law enforcement officers are also like this now. Cough cough. They're robbers and prostitutes in private. But when it comes to official matters, they turn their backs on others. In the long run, this will cause people to lose their trust. This would also cause the hearts of the people to be divided. It can't be underestimated." Chu Yang felt the same way. He said, "Yes, many brothel girls now say that this bunch of city guards and security forces took off their clothes to mess with us, and put on their clothes to catch us. Indeed, the quality of law enforcement officers is the most important thing to improve." Tai Butian sighed and said, "I didn't expect Minister Chu to still worry about the country and the people after leaving for so long." But she was ashamed. This bastard, what kind of shameless and hooligan words is he saying? Just as she was thinking, she saw Chu Yang looking at her seriously and saying, "Your Majesty, You and I are both men. There are some things that we don't have to worry about. We can say whatever we want. Although the story is a little dirty, it's also a kind of truth, right? We're all men. Tai Butian smiled and nodded. The excitement she had when they first met had now turned into another kind of excitement. She wished she could sew this guy's mouth shut. Who's a man like you? He heard Chu Yang say. Right? If I'm a hooligan, I'll be a hooligan. If I'm dirty, I'll be dirty. Right? None of them were women. So what was the point of being so bashful? Didn't you see that all of them were good men? Which one of them didn't speak rudely? Which one of them didn't open their mouths and curse? But who can say that they're not men? Not heroes? Tai Butian nodded against her will. Yes, yes. Chu Yang went forward affectionately and was about to put his arm around Tai Butian's shoulder, as if it was normal for two men to be close brothers when they were together. Tai Butian hurriedly dodged and laughed dryly. Minister Chu, we're still in the main hall of the palace. Her, am being inappropriate. Chu Yang said in great puzzlement. What inappropriate? We're all men. How many times have we gone through fire and water together? What's the big deal about hugging each other? Second update. Today's monthly votes are so pitiful. At this critical moment, I didn't want to drag it out either. I was just about to explode. Then I took a look. My monthly votes have been pulled down by so many. I wanted to cry at once. Brothers, give me a monthly vote. Let me be happy, won't you? Chapter 1189. Tai Butian almost wanted to hold her head and cry out in pain. Who's a man with you? Don't make it so that alright. He frowned and said with an embarrassed look on his face. Minister Chu, Brother Chu, I have always strictly adhered to the ancient teachings since I was a child. I have always been serious and self-disciplined. I have never therefore I can't accept close physical contact. Can Brother Chu understand? Chu Yang said bluntly. So what? We're all men. You'll get used to it. As he spoke, he reached out to hug her again. Tai Butian took another step back. Brother Chu, please give me some time to get used to it. How about that? Chu Yang seemed to be very disappointed as he said. Forget it then. I'll give you time to get used to it. Tai Butian relaxed. Chu Yang continued. Anyway, I don't have much to do during this period of time. I'll stay here for 1.5 years and wait for you to get used to it. Tai Butian opened her mouth abruptly. 1.5 years? Yes, Chu Yang said sincerely. Brother Tai, you don't know. For such a long time, sometimes in my dreams, when I think about how we treated each other wholeheartedly and worked together to create great things, my blood would surge. I can't wait to reunite with you again and drink with you. I often think about how exhilarating that would be. Tai Butian took a breath and said, yes. He also evoked memories of the past. Chu Yang said rather emotionally, Your Majesty, we brothers haven't seen each other for many years. This time, let's get together properly. Even if you chase me away, I won't leave. I'll definitely have a good drink with you. You and I brothers shall drink till we're drunk. And then, I heard that there's a hot spring in the palace? Chu Yang revealed a look of longing. He said excitedly, After drinking, let's go to the hot spring. Soak in the pool and we'll be honest with each other. Your Majesty. Haha, you won't be embarrassed, right? Tai Butian's face was pale, and she almost couldn't stand. Soak in the pool? Yes, Chu Yang laughed. At night, let's sleep together and talk about our separation. To be honest, I've really missed you all these years. Sleep together? Tai Butian's body swayed. Yes, it's just a bed. Chu Yang explained straightforwardly. Don't worry, I won't take up too much of your time. Haha, I won't delay you and your beautiful concubines. He. With that said, Minister Chu wretchedly winked. You know, I understand. I'm going to beat you to death, you shameless bastard. Tai Butian cursed angrily. For a moment, she was at a loss of what to do. Chu Yang rubbed his hands excitedly. Your Majesty, this old friend of mine has been here for such a long time. You should do something. No matter what, we should at least have a good meal, right? Yes, there's more. Where's senior sister Chanqian? Chu Yang asked. Is she in the harem? Now that you're the empress, it's naturally inappropriate for you to show your face. This you won't be jealous, right? Tai Butian was taken aback. He was just thinking about this. He wondered if Qianqian had seen Chu Yang in the upper three heavens. But when he heard this, he immediately reacted. It seemed that the two of them had not met. He couldn't help but relax inexplicably. He smiled and said, "Since Brother Chu has come from afar, I naturally have to treat you well. But, Brother Chu, do you think that there's a lack of food and wine in the palace? Do we need to specially prepare food for you?" Haha. Chu Yang smacked his forehead. "I'm confused. Sigh. I'm used to wandering the martial world alone." Tai Butian smiled lightly and said, "As for the Empress cough cough." At this point he suddenly hesitated. What should he say? Wu Qianqian had already gone to the upper three heavens to look for Chu Yang. Chu Yang had left from here. As long as he went to the upper three heavens, the two of them would be able to meet. Therefore, the so-called Empress is dead could not be said. But, if he didn't say it, how could he explain that Wu Qianqian wasn't in the palace now? He had no choice but to change the topic. "Brother Chu, let's go. I'll take you out for a meal. Let's have a good drink." Chu Yang smiled and said, "Okay." The two of them walked out side by side. Both of them had ulterior motives. Along the way, they actually didn't speak much. There were still many officials waiting outside the hall. Tai Butian directly issued a decree to suspend court for 3 days. No one was to be seen. To put it simply, don't bother me if there's nothing. Don't bother me if there's anything. But after issuing this decree, Tai Butian immediately regretted it. Was his head kicked by a donkey? Not going to court for 3 days was obviously to accompany this scoundrel. But how was he going to accompany him? This guy would get touchy at the drop of a hat. And he even wanted to get drunk? And be honest with him? And sleep with his feet touching? This was really going to kill him. Imperial Garden, on the stone table. This place was spacious, and had a panoramic view of the surroundings. This was a place that Tai Butian, the emperor, had specially chosen to drink with Chu Yang. Here so many people could see, he couldn't possibly go crazy drunk, right? But the emperor had obviously underestimated the thickness of Chu Yang's skin. After 3 rounds of wine and 5 dishes, Minister Chu was obviously a little tongue-tied. His eyes were also a little blurry. He was in high spirits and talked about everything. When he was happy, he even stood up and gesticulated. Tai Butian sighed inwardly. In the past, when they were together, the situation was tense. Life and death were decided in an instant. There wasn't much opportunity to drink. Only today did he know that Chu Yang's alcohol tolerance was really not that good. "Your Majesty, do you still remember Diwuqingru?" Chu Yang gulped down another 3 or 4 cups. It was obvious that the minister was very happy, very excited, and very much in the mood to talk. "Diwuqingru? What's wrong?" "Diwuqingru. It's that big battle we had back then." Minister Chu was obviously drunk and described unsteadily. The palace maids serving around all looked at this strange guest of the emperor with strange eyes. They all frowned. How could it be so noisy in the palace? How could our emperor have such a friend? At this moment, Chu Yang waved his hand drunkenly and said to a palace maid, "You come here. Pour the wine." The palace maid was holding a wine jar in her hands. Hearing this, she hurried over. But when she bent down to pour the wine, Minister Chu pinched her face and touched it. She couldn't help but cry out. Chu Yang laughed strangely. He twirled the jar with his fingers and sniffed it. So fragrant, so smooth, haha. Tai Butian was so angry that her face turned red. She slammed the table. "What are you doing?" Chu Yang looked sideways and said in surprise, "Your Majesty, I say brother, what's wrong with you? She's just a little palace maid. What's the big deal?" Tai Butian said angrily, "How can a hero take liberties with women and children? To hell with being a hero." Chu Yang snorted and said, "Your Majesty, haha, you're the emperor now. 3 palaces, 72 concubines, beautiful women in your harem. Haha. Your brothers fought bloody battles and went through untold hardships to conquer the country for you. But you're still single now." Tai Butian was stunned. "We won't be jealous even if you enjoy all the luck with women. But you're the emperor. You should at least be a little humane, right?" Chu Yang was drunk. He said with a lisp, "Can you really bear to do that? Do you have any idea how long I've been living as a bachelor? When I eat, the pot and stove are cold. When I sleep, I can't fall asleep. His breath reeked of alcohol. You, on the other hand, have a beautiful woman waiting on you. Now that I pinched this little girl's face, you're unhappy? Tai Butian's face turned green. Brother Chu, you know that's not what I meant. I'm just joking. Look at how anxious you are. Chu Yang's expression changed really quickly. He saw Tai Butian's sudden anger and reprimand just now. The anger just now was definitely not because I took liberties with the palace maid. Instead, it was a little hysterical. She was probably jealous. Oh, jealous? As long as you don't surrender to me, I'll make you jealous enough. We've drunk enough wine. Let's go to the hot spring. Minister Chu stood up slightly trembling. I suddenly feel a little dizzy. Tai Butian said. I'll get the servants to bring you there. I'll go back and rest for a while. Dizzy? Don't worry. I'll be fine after soaking in the hot spring. Chu Yang said and waved his hand. Actually, I often feel dizzy too. But as long as I take off all my clothes and soak in the hot spring, I'll feel much better. Let's go, let's go. Your Majesty, you must believe me. Soaking in the hot spring, you must have someone to accompany you. Soaking and chatting at the same time is really enjoyable. Tai Butian complained in her heart. Enjoyment? If I really soak in the hot spring with you, then you'll really be enjoying yourself. This bastard. Yes, it's like this. Tai Butian rolled her eyes and said, Brother Chu, it's like this. I just had a child. Yes. The little fellow wants me to accompany him to take a nap every morning. He's probably already anxious by now and is crying nonstop. The little fellow has a bad temper. As a parent, sigh, this is also the pitiful heart of a parent. Chu Yang's eyes lit up. In that instant, there was actually some dazzling light. Really? Then I must go and take a look. Haha. Brother Tai, your child will definitely be good. Tai Butian muttered in her heart. What do you mean by your child will definitely be good? But this doubt was then crushed by panic. Tai Butian was flustered. Oh no, he's going to see the child. What should I do? For a moment, she actually couldn't help but want to smack herself on the mouth. Who asked you to spout nonsense? Who asked you to speak without thinking? Great, now you've gotten yourself into trouble. If Chu Yang were to see this child, whose appearance was as if cast from the same mold as his, how could he not be suspicious? Go. Let's go and take a look. Chu Yang was in high spirits. Isn't your child as good as my child? How can I not see my child? Haha, bring me to see this little one. I've even brought a lot of gifts for our first meeting. Tai Butian was even more perplexed. Isn't your child as good as my child? How can I not see my child? These words seemed strange no matter how she listened to them. Chapter 1190. Chu Yang's strength was much stronger than Tai Butian's. How could Tai Butian resist? She was actually dragged by him, and stumbled all the way. After taking 7 or 8 steps, Tai Butian suddenly shook off Chu Yang's hand, and stood there motionless. Chu Yang turned back in surprise and asked, What's wrong? Tai Butian stood there, her body trembling slightly. Looking at Chu Yang, she asked in a low voice, Brother Chu, have you found out about something? Chu Yang asked in puzzlement. What can I know? Which aspect are you talking about? Tai Butian's sharp gaze looked at Chu Yang's face. After a long while she said, Your sudden arrival this time makes me feel very strange. Chu Yang said with a half-smile. Strange? What's strange? Tai Butian wanted to say something but hesitated. She said, It's a feeling. It's indescribably strange. Chu Yang burst into laughter. I say, you're obviously a man but you're actually playing around with feelings. This is really ha. Tai Butian relaxed. Looking at Chu Yang's overjoyed expression, she also smiled. Brother Tai, how does it feel to rule the world and be an emperor? Chu Yang narrowed his eyes. All the land in the world belongs to the emperor. All the people on the shores of the land are the emperor's subjects. Very satisfying, right? Tai Butian smiled, fatigue in her eyes. However, she sighed deeply. Chu Yang's eyes flashed and he asked tentatively, Are you very tired? Tai Butian sighed softly again. Finally she said, Tired? Satisfying? Brother Chu, you don't know. Being an emperor may look glorious, but it's actually the most boring job. Moreover, it's exhausting, but in the end it's just a lonely job. It's really hard to explain. Chu Yang's eyes flashed again. He asked, is it that tiring? Is it that boring? Tai Butian's eyes were deep. She said, when I was the emperor, there were still people who told me jokes every day. There were also a few people close to me. When I became the emperor, there were fewer. However, there were still a few friends who dared to say a few sincere words in front of me. They said, but when I became the emperor. She smiled bitterly. You know what? Every day, I have to face a group of swindlers with the highest IQ in the world. Every day, I have to rack my brain to distinguish which sentence is true, which sentence is false, and which sentence is to frame be can. This feeling is really hard to describe. Chu Yang said dully, cheat? Not bad. Tai Butian nodded indifferently and said, all the military officials in the Golden Palace, no matter which one of them is, are definitely first-rate swindlers. Every day, I have to face so many lies. Every day, these lies will make up different lies to deceive me. One came suddenly, and the other came to flatter him. But they all had their own motives behind it. Some of them are doing it for the public. That's still fine. But most of them are doing it for personal reasons. They're like flies and dogs. It's extremely chaotic. Every one of them looks righteous on the surface. But when they turn around, everyone's buttocks are dirty. As a subject, I have to figure out the intentions of my superior all the time. But as a monarch, I have to figure out these subjects all the time. It's easy for hundreds of people to figure out one person. But it's extremely difficult for one person to figure out hundreds of people. Tai Butian sighed softly. Brother Chu, you're not an outsider. I'll also tell you the truth. Among the hundreds of officials in the Golden Palace, if you really investigate and find out the truth, other than me, there are definitely no more than 5 people who can still stand in the Golden Palace without their heads falling to the ground. This time, Chu Yang was really shocked. There are so many. Tai Butian nodded tiredly and smiled bitterly. Iron Cloud Nation is fighting corruption every day and punishing corrupt officials every day. But as a monarch, I have to work with corrupt officials every day. I discuss national affairs with them and let them carry out national policies and laws. Brother Chu, isn't this very ironic? Chu Yang was silent. Some people say, being an official for 1,000 miles is only for money. Some people say, 3 years of being a magistrate and 100,000 silver. Some people say, when a man achieves the Tao, even his chickens and dogs rise to the heavens. Some people say, one day when power is in hand, revenge will be avenged. There are even people who say, why not study hard for 10 years, just for the sake of passing the imperial examinations and riches? Tai Butian smiled bitterly. Scholars all have such goals in mind when they study. What will happen when they become officials? This is really something that I don't even dare to think about. But I have to face these things that I don't even dare to think about every day. Brother Chu, do you think I'm tired or happy? Or happiness? Tai Butian asked with a smile. Chu Yang sighed softly. I really don't know what to say. Tai Butian laughed. For example, in the Golden Palace, it's fine if it's just the corrupt officials. But they're all ganging up on each other and attacking each other. They're kicking people when they're down and making groundless accusations. They're making oblique accusations and setting traps for each other. And I, the high and mighty emperor, am the greatest weapon that the officials can use. Tai Butian smiled and said, actually, in your humble servant's eyes, a ruler is not a person but a sword. It is a kind of absolute power. Whoever makes good use of it will be able to rise in rank and make a fortune. Furthermore, he will be able to kill the person he dislikes the most. Therefore, everyone is sparing no effort to make use of the emperor. And they have to put on an expression of unparalleled loyalty and patriotism. Tai Butian looked at Chu Yang with some admiration. I'm still all right. But if it were you, Minister Chu, in this position, with your temper and your stubbornness, I'm afraid that within a few days, all the officials in the Golden Palace would have been killed by you. Chu Yang laughed out loud and nodded. This is indeed possible. Tai Butian said, in history, there are very few wise emperors and many fatuous ones. But every wise emperor is miserable. Fatuous emperors are fatuous emperors, because firstly, they were too restrained when they were young. But the biggest reason is, of course, these people in the imperial court. Who would be willing to face such a group of disgusting liars every day? Every monarch, even if he later becomes infinitely muddle-headed, when he ascends the throne, he wants to be a wise monarch. This is undeniable. Most fatuous emperors are sexual lovers, and sexual lovers can't be emperors. Tai Butian said dispassionately and sighed again. That's right. Chu Yang agreed and said, for example, prostitutes. Every prostitute was once a good and innocent woman. Tai Butian's face darkened at once. For a moment, she wished she could give him a good kick. You're talking so seriously about national affairs. Such a heavy topic, such a gloomy state of mind. And you're actually talking about prostitutes? This is simply intolerable. Minister Chu, you must have been wandering around outside during this period of time, right? Tai Butian grinned. Looking at Minister Chu, you seem to be very knowledgeable. Tai Butian smiled very amiably as if saying, we're all men, we all know. But when Chu Yang heard it, he felt a chill run down his spine, and a cold wind blow at the back of his head. Especially that sentence seemed to be very knowledgeable. It felt as if he was going to die. In front of Brother Tai, I'm not afraid of embarrassing myself. Chu Yang coughed and put on a sincere look. To be honest, Your Majesty, I'm ashamed. Other than being detoxified by that little Tian back then, I'm still a virgin. Tai Butian's heart skipped a beat at once. When she heard detoxified by that little Tian, she couldn't help but burn all over. She coughed dryly, feeling her mouth dry and her head dizzy. She forced herself to calm down and laughed dryly. In that case, Minister Chu has actually been keeping his chastity? Chu Yang also coughed dryly and said, yes, I've always been a bachelor. Tai Butian laughed dryly, and didn't say anything else. In reality, she didn't know what to say now. But she felt an inexplicable sweetness in her heart. It's really unbearable to hold it in. However, Chu Yang heaved a long sigh as if he was a ghost. Tai Butian blushed instantly. The two of them talked as they walked. When they saw that they were already close to the bedchamber, Chu Yang said intentionally or unintentionally, Your Majesty, being an emperor, isn't a good thing either. It's really better to travel the world with one or two close friends without any worries, and live a carefree life. There was a look of longing in Tai Butian's eyes, but she shook her head with a wry smile. Brother Chu, it's easy for you to say, but how difficult is it to do? How can I bear to abandon these billions of people? This is the legacy of our ancestors, the struggles of dozens of generations, the dreams of thousands of years. Which one of them isn't like a huge mountain pressing down on my heart? She was silent for a while, and finally sighed. I can't abandon them. I can't abandon them. If I really leave this life, how can my conscience be at ease? Chu Yang sighed heavily. This time he was really silent. This was the reason why he didn't dare to reveal it all along. A sovereign of a generation. The only successor. All the lives of the world, the legacy of our ancestors, the hardships of the people, the chaos of war. All of them needed a wise sovereign like Tai Butian. If he took her away and tucked her into his bed, then, not to mention whether Tai Butian was willing or not, even if the world was willing, would they be willing? What should he do? He had absolute martial power, but he could kill thousands of people. But could he kill billions of people at once? Once there was no longer a wise sovereign to suppress them, how many ambitious people would there be in the world? No matter how high his cultivation was, he wouldn't be able to curb the greed and ambition that grew in people's hearts like weeds. When that time came, there would definitely be wars and wars everywhere. Could it be that he would ignore the people of the world, just because of his own selfishness? But if he cared about all these, could he just abandon their mother in the lower three heavens? While he himself commanded the wind and clouds in the upper three heavens, living a carefree and happy life. Then was he still human? Tai Butian's face became redder and redder all the way to the bedroom. Her heart beat faster and faster, and her emotions became more and more flustered. How could she stop her good friend from wanting to see the child? She couldn't, no matter what. But once he saw the child, would Chu Yang recognize him? Would he suspect anything? But she had already come all the way here, and the arrow was already knocked on the bow. Chu Yang was also very agitated. His heart beat faster and faster, and his face became redder and redder. His eyes were almost shining, and for a moment, his breathing became rapid. His child. His son. Chapter 1191. Unexpectedly, there were no sounds of children playing inside. Instead, it was very quiet. The palace maid walked out quietly. He's asleep. Chuyang was stunned. So regular? It was just noon and the sun was still right above his head. Only those who lived a very regular life, and were very disciplined, and had developed the habit of taking afternoon naps, could possibly take a nap at this time. Little Yang Yang has always been very regular when he sleeps. Tai Butian smiled proudly. Brother Chu, do you know? This child has almost never wet the bed since he was young. He's very worry-free. He eats when he should and sleeps when he should. He's very quiet, very smart, and a very good child. There was undisguised pride on Tai Butian's face. Chu Yang scratched his head. I'll go in and take a look. What are you going to look at when he's asleep? Tai Butian was a little displeased. There's still a long way to go. What if you wake him up? Chu Yang chuckled. I'll just take a look gently. Under Tai Butian's extreme reluctance, Chu Yang walked in stealthily, as if he was a thief. On the big bed, a small figure was sleeping soundly. His body was covered with a thick blanket, and his hands were placed under the blanket. His small figure appeared very quiet and steady, actually giving off a sense of tranquility. A milky fragrance unique to children wafted over. Chu Yang went closer, and saw that the child's complexion was normal, and his skin was tender. His small mouth was rosy and he had a high nose. His eyes were slightly closed, making his eyelashes look even longer, as if there were two small fans covering his eyes. His breathing was steady, and he was clearly in deep sleep. Chu Yang felt a surge of excitement in his heart. He felt a warm current surging up, and he almost teared up. He stood in front of the bed with his back hunched, motionless and looking at him greedily. That's right. This was her child. Not to mention the face that was almost 100% similar to her. And not to mention the charm that was almost 100% identical to her. Just the sudden feeling of being connected to her flesh and blood was enough to make her feel intoxicated. Just looking at him like this made Chu Yang realize that he didn't want to leave anymore. He felt like hugging the little fellow in front of him, kissing him fiercely and laughing out loud. Moreover, his heart was filled with the feeling of infinite satisfaction, that kind of feeling of wanting nothing else. At this moment, Chu Yang simply wanted to look up to the sky and let out a long howl of laughter. Without an official position, one's body would be light, and everything would be sufficient. This was a very common farmer's concept. But now, Chu Yang felt that this sentence was really fucking reasonable. How beautiful. So beautiful. Good girl. Minister Chu muttered to himself. Tai Butian was rather anxious. This fellow had the tendency of being unable to look away once he saw something. How could this be? However, she quietly pulled Chu Yang's sleeve a few times, but Chu Yang didn't even notice. Finally, a mission. What are you doing? Chu Yang turned his head in displeasure. He frowned and asked in a low voice. Can't I just take a look? Tai Butian was rather speechless. She replied softly. You've already been watching for more than an hour. Chu Yang awkwardly stood up. Then he reluctantly looked at her again and said, More than half an hour has passed so quickly. Let's talk outside. Don't wake him up. Tai Butian tugged at his sleeve and walked out. Chu Yang kept looking back as she dragged him out. When they were outside, they walked into the study and closed the door. Tai Butian heaved a sigh of relief. Chu Yang looked at Tai Butian. Suddenly, a fire of jealousy burned fiercely in his heart. Damn it, my son, look at him being dragged out too. Yet this woman is with him every day. She's monopolizing him. Chu Yang suddenly felt very suffocated. Previously, he had been thinking about his responsibilities, burdens, the world, the people, his difficulties, and so on. But now, he didn't want to restrain himself anymore. Especially after seeing his son, this feeling was even more uncontrollable. He's really very cute. Minister Chu's throat was dry. He snatched Tai Butian's teacup from the study and gulped down 2 big mouthfuls. Wiping his mouth, he asked somewhat hurriedly, What's his name? Taiyang. Tai Butian was equally perturbed. It means that he's as tough as iron. Standing tall and proud, he looks down on the world. Taiyang, Taiyang. The more Chu Yang muttered, the more he felt that something was wrong. He felt somewhat uncomfortable. If this little one were to return to the clan and change his surname to Chu, he would be called Chu Yang? Wouldn't he have the same name as me then? Chu Yang was somewhat speechless. It was already a joke that his own father had become his sworn brother. Who would have thought that when it was his turn, he would have to have the same name as his son? Taiyang, that's a pretty good name. Minister Chu pinched his nose and said against his will. Does he have a nickname? His nickname will be Little Yang Yang. Tai Butian smiled. As for his nickname, it can only be given when he's 10 years old and crowns his crown. Not bad, Little Yang Yang. Chu Yang smiled bitterly. My nickname is Yang Yang. Teacher used to call me Little Yang Yang. Now not only has my son taken over my name, he's even plagiarized my nickname. Do you have the same name? Tai Butian rolled her eyes. No, his surname is Tai and yours is Chu. How can you have the same name? Chu Yang put down his teacup with a heavy heart and heaved a long sigh. Tai Butian's heart shrank. Why is Brother Chu sighing? Chu Yang's expression was bleak. Brother Tai, didn't you ask me why I suddenly came to the lower three heavens? What I said then was actually not true. Actually, the main reason I came to the lower three heavens this time was to ask for your help. Tai Butian was startled. Help? Yes, Chu Yang said seriously. In this world only you, Brother Tai, can help me with this matter. Seeing how serious he was, Tai Butian's heart couldn't help but become heavy. She said, Brother Chu, as long as I can help, even if I have to use all the power of the country, I won't shirk my duty. Chu Yang sighed deeply and said, I still remember that day when we parted. Brother Tai once said, the martial world is dangerous, take care of yourself. I, Chu Yang, admit that I'm careful and quick-witted enough. But in the upper three heavens I still fell into their trap. Tai Butian's expression tightened. Fell into their trap. What's wrong? You're injured. But I'm poisoned. Chu Yang sighed. Brother Tai, I seem like a good person to you now, right? But actually I used elixirs to suppress the toxicity. But this is not a long-term solution. Once it flares up, my whole body will turn into pus and I'll die. As he spoke, Chu Yang took out a small gourd of spiritual spring water and said, and I only have this little bit of medicine to suppress the toxicity. It can only suppress it for a month's time. Chu Yang looked at Tai Butian sorrowfully and somewhat tragically. If Brother Tai doesn't save me, a month later, you and I will be separated by life and death. Brother Tai, look, there are already changes on my arm. As he spoke, he rolled up his sleeves and revealed his arm. On his upper arm, there was a dark green patch that seemed to be rotting. Tai Butian's expression changed drastically. What kind of poison is in you? How can it be so overbearing? She was angry and anxious. You're poisoned and you're still drinking with me? Chu Yang put down his sleeves and smiled lightly. The poison can be ignored, but when good brothers meet, wine must be drunk. Tai Butian was furious. Cut the crap. Tell me, what kind of poison is in you? How do you need me to help you? What are you dawdling for? Tai Butian was really anxious now. Her eyes were about to spit fire. Brother Tai has also seen this kind of poison before. That's why after I knew about it, I immediately abandoned everything and rushed here with all my might. Chu Yang grabbed Tai Butian's hand. Brother Tai, you must save me. Don't worry, Tai Butian said confidently. As long as I can do it, I will definitely. New clothes are not as good as old friends. Chu Yang sighed emotionally. Brother Tai, you're still a true friend. Are you going to tell me or not? Tai Butian was so anxious that she stomped her feet. I'm poisoned. Chu Yang looked at the Empress with bright eyes and said softly, I'm poisoned with aphrodisiac. Aphrodisiac. Tai Butian was dumbfounded. To be more specific, it's the kind of aphrodisiac that I once encountered in the mountains of Beyond the Heavens sect. The corners of Chu Yang's mouth twisted into a smile. The aphrodisiac of the lust dragon. Ah! Tai Butian let out a cry of shock, dumbfounded. At this moment, her whole body was burning up intensely. Tai Butian was finally sure that Chu Yang had long known about this matter. He was here today to lay his cards on the table with her. The emperor was so ashamed that she couldn't show her face. But Chu Yang obviously wouldn't let her off. Even now, He was still holding her hand and shaking it vigorously. "Brother Tai, you can definitely cure this poison." Tai Butian's greatest secret hidden in the bottom of her heart was suddenly exposed, and it was clearly exposed by the person involved. She was angry, embarrassed. Her whole body was burning up. She held the dagger tightly and said angrily, "Let go of me. Let go of me." At this point, if Chu Yang let go, then he really wouldn't be called Chu Yang anymore. He might as well be called Stupid Pig Chu. He held Tai Butian's hand tightly and refused to let go. He kept pleading, "Brother Tai, please save me. My poison is quite serious." Tai Butian lowered her head with all her might, burying her face into her chest. "You idiot! Let go of me. You." One could vaguely see that even her neck had turned red. Her two little ears were also so red that they were almost transparent like agates. It was too hasty and unexpected. His Majesty's wisdom had already flown beyond the clouds. Now his mind and heart were completely blank. Chapter 1192. Tai Butian resisted with all her might. Right now, her mind was in a mess, and she was so embarrassed that she couldn't think. She wanted to rebuke him angrily and argue for what was right. She had countless reasons in her mind, but she couldn't say anything at the moment. She was completely engulfed in panic. She could only use her hands to support herself against Chu Yang's chest, panting. You, let go. Let go, let go," Chu Yang said. "It's easy to let go of you, but what about my poison?" Minister Chu was acting shamelessly, but he was secretly pleased. Damn it, I really couldn't tell that this girl was so well endowed. She looked as flat as a man, but it was only after physical contact that I realized that you really couldn't judge a book by its cover. It was just that, how did such a majestic thing hide? Chu Yang took a look and realized that all he saw was still a flat surface. He couldn't help but feel puzzled. Looks like this thing can completely affect one's vision. What exactly is this good thing? Chu Yang was extremely puzzled. He wanted to ask the sword spirit, but then he remembered that the sword spirit had gone on strike ever since he entered the passage. After a round of exploration, he still couldn't find where the thing that could affect one's vision was. Chu Yang was extremely puzzled. "Let go of me." Tai Butian struggled with all her might. "I'm poisoned." Chu Yang hugged her shamelessly. "Hugging me like this can relieve some of the poison." However, he scoffed at his own words in his heart. Relieve some of the poison? Seems like this poison is getting more and more powerful. Poison your head, you bastard. Tai Butian was extremely embarrassed. She exerted all her strength and struggled out of his arms, panting like a cow. Outside the door, a sharp voice said cautiously, Your Majesty, what happened? Do you need us?" Chu Yang crossed his arms and looked at her with a half-smile. Tai Butian stomped her feet and sorted out her messy thoughts. She tried her best to keep her voice steady and shouted, "None of you are allowed to come in. All of you leave." After a pause, she said somewhat angrily, "All of you leave the palace. No one is allowed to come in." She thought about how she was being bullied by this bastard. If others saw or heard about this, then she, the emperor, would really be too ashamed to face them. Entangling with a man in her image as a man. Tai Butian's heart shuddered at the thought of it. But as soon as she gave the order, she immediately regretted it. If everyone left, wouldn't it make things easier for this scoundrel? However, there was a sound of agreement from outside, followed by a crash, and the guards, maids, and eunuchs disappeared without a trace. Tai Butian panted heavily as she held onto the table. Her eyes darted around, trying to calm her emotions down completely. At the same time, he racked his brains to think of a countermeasure. What should he do? What should he do? But after thinking about it for a long time, he felt his heart become more and more confused. He didn't have a single clue at all. She was usually someone who would remain calm, even if a mountain collapsed in front of her. She was quick-witted and calm in the entire heavenly layer. However, she was at her wits' end when facing this person, whom she was deeply in love with. However, Chu Yang didn't seem as anxious as before. Instead, he calmly and steadily took 2 steps back. Then he crossed his arms and calmly sat down. "You already knew, didn't you?" Tai Butian questioned fiercely. Her face was still very red, but under the cover of that magical piece of jade, She didn't look too pathetic. No what? Chu Yang asked with a puzzled look on his face. Don't play dumb. Tai Butian stomped her feet fiercely and roared in grief, indignation, and embarrassment. Now that there was no one around, the emperor immediately became fierce again. Oh, you're talking about me being poisoned? Chu Yang suddenly realized. I'm really poisoned. I don't know how to cure you. Tai Butian roared with a red face. She said angrily. I'm a man. How can I cure your poison? Even if you know how to cure me, I won't necessarily use you. Chu Yang crossed his legs and said, I know you're a man. A man, that person. But I didn't say I'll let you cure me. Call little Tian Tian out, and I'll let little Tian Tian cure you. Little Tian Tian is familiar with this and has experience. I'm not worried. Tai Butian was instantly ashamed and scolded angrily. Bastard! If you don't call little Tian Tian out, you will cure me. Chu Yang stretched out 2 fingers and said, You have 2 choices. First, you turn into a woman and cure me. Second, you let little Tian Tian cure me. The poison must be cured. There's no room for discussion. Tai Butian gritted her teeth and looked at this shameless person. Where was she going to find that little Tian Tian? Tai Butian and little Tian Tian were the same person in the first place. This guy obviously knew the whole truth, but still pretended to be magnanimous, and said that he was giving her 2 choices. What choice could she make? Pooh. Tai Butian's delicate body trembled. Her lips trembled as she asked, Let's be serious. How? How did you know? If I wanted to know, I naturally knew. Chu Yang retracted his playful attitude. His expression turned solemn as he looked at Tai Butian with bright eyes. Tai Butian was actually flustered by his gaze and lowered her head. I've always been curious. From the moment I saw you, you were a man. Chu Yang was somewhat puzzled. Even now you're still a man, but you're clearly a woman. How did you do it? Tai Butian bit her lip and said hatefully, It's none of your business. In the past, it was none of my business. But now I can't. Chu Yang dragged his voice. Brother Tai Xian. Shut up. The word Brother Tai made Tai Butian feel extremely embarrassed again. Before her identity was exposed, it was only natural for her to be called Brother Tai. But now, no matter how she heard it, it didn't seem right. Tell me the reason, Chu Yang said seriously. Tai Butian was silent. Chu Yang sighed and said, That day, I waved my sword across the sky and fought at Song Mountain. The outcome was already decided and I left. I thought that I had left without any worries. Who would have thought that I owed so much? You didn't want me to know, because you were afraid of increasing my burden. But have you ever thought that if I'm kept in the dark for the rest of my life, then wouldn't I be worse than a dog? Chu Yang stood up and walked over slowly. His voice was gentle as he said softly, Back then, in the mountains of Beyond the Heavens sect, the little Tian Tian who risked her chastity to save me was you, right? Well, Butian stood there in a daze. Her eyes suddenly turned hazy, and she felt weak all over. Hearing this, she couldn't help but nod lightly. Little Tian Tian, is your nickname? Chu Yang asked softly. Tai Butian bit her lip again and nodded lightly. Let little Tian Tian show herself. Chu Yang placed his hands on both of her shoulders. His warm breath seemed to be about to melt Tai Butian. He said softly, Let me see my savior. Tai Butian struggled hard. You've already seen her. No, I haven't, Chu Yang said lightly. I'm tired of seeing you, the emperor. Now I want to see little Tian Tian. Tai Butian only shook her head. Chu Yang took a deep breath and said, All right, if you insist on not letting me see little Tian Tian, then I'll strip you naked. Let's see if His Majesty the Emperor is still a man when he's naked. As he spoke, he exerted force and tore outwards with a tearing sound. Tai Butian's imperial robe was instantly torn apart by him. Wait! Tai Butian panicked at once. She knew that this guy in front of her was definitely someone who would do what he said. She clutched the front of her clothes tightly and said shyly, I'll tell you. Hurry up and say it. Minister Chu was immensely proud of himself. He had a very arrogant attitude. Suddenly, a feeling of pleasure arose in his heart, as if he was robbing a common woman. Tai Butian bit her lip and said, I have a piece of jade on me. A piece of jade? Chu Yang looked at her questioningly. A piece of jade. As she spoke, She took off the illusory image jade from around her neck. Holding it in her hand, she lowered her head deeply. However, this great transformation had left Minister Chu dumbstruck. After taking off that piece of jade, the graceful and elegant emperor in front of him actually transformed into a delicate and slender beauty. Apart from the fact that the crown was still on her head, even if she was blind, she would definitely not say that the person in front of her was a man. A dense light screen flashed past. That originally flat chest suddenly trembled and rose, and that waist that originally looked very manly shrunk rapidly into a slim waist. Her figure was tall and curvaceous. A scent that belonged to a woman hit him in the face. Minister Chu was dumbfounded. Her face was like a full moon, and her skin was delicate. Although her head was lowered, those cherry lips, perky nose, long eyelashes and that silhouette were clearly that of a peerless beauty. A peerless beauty dressed in the emperor's robes was standing in front of him in such a disheveled state, looking shy and timid. Chu Yang was dumbfounded. He muttered to himself, "Sure enough, she's a girl. And such a beautiful girl." This young master's first cough. Have you seen enough?" Tai Butian said angrily. As she spoke, she reached out to grab that piece of jade, and was about to put it back on. Chu Yang was quick. With a whoosh, that piece of jade was already in his hands. The next moment, with a flip of his palm, it was already in the tribulation dimension. "You want to change back? Wishful thinking. I haven't seen enough." Tai Butian was furious at once. "Give it back to me." But Chu Yang's expression changed, and he bowed respectfully to her. Tai Butian was shocked. "What are you doing?" She hurriedly dodged. Chu Yang said seriously, "This is my gratitude to you. Thank you, miss, for saving my life at such a critical moment without caring about your daughter's innocence. This kindness is hard to repay. This is the first reason." Tai Butian was a little dizzy. Was there a second and third reason? She heard Chu Yang go on. "Secondly, thank you for giving birth to my child, and allowing the Chu clan to have a descendant. Thirdly, it's too hard for you to raise a child alone. I don't know much about that, but I have to thank you." Tai Butian's face turned red. She stomped her feet and said, "Who wants your thanks?" Chu Yang said seriously, "I really don't know how to repay Mrs. Kindness. After thinking about it, I can't think of anything. I can only repay Mrs. Kindness by giving myself to you." Chapter 1193. This was the first time in her life that Tai Butian, who was a girl, was exposed in front of others. She was still not used to it, so when she heard this, she blushed and said angrily, "Nothing good comes out of a dog's mouth. We'll discuss whether something good comes out of a dog's mouth in the future." Chu Yang straightened up and said, "I've already expressed my gratitude. Next, let's settle the score." Tai Butian was stunned. "Settle the score? What score?" Chu Yang said fiercely, "Humph. The matter you did back then was closely related to me, but you hid it from me. My innocence was also ruined in your hands. This is the first point. You were pregnant, but as the person who made you pregnant, you didn't tell me either. This is the second point. You gave birth to a child, and the child is mine. You didn't tell me either. This is the third point. When the child grew up, you didn't even want him to acknowledge his ancestors. This is the fourth point." Tai Butian was embarrassed and confused. She was furious. What kind of twisted logic is this? This fellow actually said that his innocence was ruined in my hands. He's shameless to this extent. He's really a weirdo in the world. Chu Yang said, "Combined punishment for multiple crimes. I'll now execute the family law." Family law? Tai Butian was stunned. She was the ruler of the world, and this fellow was actually going to execute the family law on her? What family law? Then she saw the guy in front of her fiercely step forward. Before she could react, he had already grabbed her by the waist. She felt dizzy for a moment, and was pressed face down on his thigh. Then he waved his right hand, and a crisp paw sound was heard. Tai Butian let out a cry, her almond-shaped eyes wide open. Her delicate buttocks had been slapped hard by Chu Yang. Chu Yang said, "You're so lawless and disobedient. If you're not punished, won't you turn the world upside down in the future?" Smack. The emperor's noble buttocks were slapped again. Tai Butian let out another cry of shock. It didn't hurt that much. But it was the first time in her life that she was spanked in such a position. Not to mention that Tai Butian was the ruler of a generation. Who would dare to spank her? But now, not only had she been beaten up, she had even been beaten up in such a shameful manner, after she had regained her original appearance. Tai Butian couldn't accept this at all. She bellowed furiously, "Put me down!" However, Chu Yang's hand was pressing down on her like a heavy mountain. She couldn't move at all. His right hand, however, slapped after slapping without mercy. Tai Butian's face flushed red. Hearing the slapping sounds and feeling the pain, Tai Butian was furious at first. He was furious. After struggling for a while, the strength of the struggle gradually weakened. Her face became redder and redder as she bit her red lips. She tried her best to stop herself from screaming. Chu Yang was also angry. So he used some strength in the first few slaps. But he didn't use any strength later on. On the contrary, he enjoyed it a little. But of course he had to ask fiercely, "Do you know you're wrong?" Tai Butian gritted her teeth and didn't say anything. "Pa, do you understand?" He still didn't speak. "Pa." Chu Yang continued to slap her unhurriedly. Suddenly, a strange emotion surged up in his heart. He became more and more agitated. "Are you confessing or not?" Chu Yang's mouth was crooked. Don't hit me anymore. I know I'm wrong." After more than 10 slaps, Tai Butian finally couldn't take it anymore. It wasn't because of the torture, but because Chu Yang didn't use any strength in the last few slaps at all. They were practically caressing her, strictly speaking Tai Butian. This was the first time in her life that she was so close to a man. Although it was once in the mountains of Beyond the Heavens sect, she was flustered and didn't have any memories at all. Even if she did, it was pain and worry. She couldn't bear to think about it. This time, she was really in a man's arms. For a moment, her whole body went limp. "You know you're wrong?" Chu Yang was overjoyed. But he still gave her another slap. "Then where did you go wrong?" Tai Butian was so embarrassed that she was about to break down. She was also about to die of anger. This guy was still not done. "Let me up first. I'll tell you." She was already panting. But she didn't expect another slap to answer her. "No, just say it like that." Tai Butian really wanted to faint. She had no choice but to lower her voice and beg, "Brother Chu." "Huh?" Chu Yang snorted. "Chu Yang." Tai Butian hurriedly corrected herself. She begged, "Chu Yang. You. Can you at least save me some dignity?" Smack. What answered her was of course a slap. Chu Yang became more and more spirited. He didn't let her off. "You've already given birth to a son. And you're still talking about dignity in front of me. You really deserve a slap." But as Chu Yang slapped her, a change in his mentality slowly occurred. The more he slapped her, the better he felt. Soft, firm, perky. Chu Yang, a virgin who had been thirsty for several years, suddenly felt his blood boiling. Strictly speaking, Chu Yang was the same as Tai Butian. They were both virgins in this life. The difference was that although Tai Butian's memories of her first time were somewhat unbearable, she could still remember some things. But Chu Yang didn't know anything, and had lost his first time in a daze. Now that he knew that he had actually missed such an important thing, how could Chu Yang let it go? To a man, this was practically a great humiliation. And now the culprit was right in front of him. Chu Yang's hand unknowingly slid into her lapel. Tai Butian's whole body trembled. Suddenly, with a strength that came from nowhere, she actually broke free from his grip and retreated. She used too much strength and almost fell on her butt. Chu Yang looked up and swallowed a mouthful of saliva. The beauty in front of him was flushed. Her hair was messy, and even the crown on her head was crooked. Strands of beautiful hair were scattered and her perky breasts were trembling with her rapid breathing. "So beautiful," Chu Yang murmured. Tai Butian's beauty was different from Wu Qianqian's, Mo Qingwu's and Zi Xieching's. This was a kind of elegant, noble and majestic beauty. Moreover, she was graceful and peerless. Between her smile and frown, what was displayed was an awe-inspiring and inviolable nobility, as if looking at her was blasphemy. But this kind of beauty in Chu Yang's eyes. Out of nowhere, he felt the thrill of conquering her. This was because such a fairy-like beauty had already given birth to a son for him. What else was there to worry about? Chu Yang pounced on her like a hungry wolf. Wait! Tai Butian took 2 steps back and shouted. Her expression was resolute. Suddenly, she pulled out a knife and held it against her neck. If you use force, I will die in front of you. Chu Yang was instantly stunned. He felt a little dizzy. What kind of show was she putting on now? She had already given birth to a son. Why was she still? Although he could snatch Tai Butian's knife away with just a stretch of his hand, it wouldn't hurt Tai Butian at all. But he still chose to take 2 steps back. Tai Butian held the knife with one hand, her gaze relaxed. She started to pant rapidly. After a long while, her breathing finally stabilized. Then, she stood up and tidied up her clothes. She walked slowly to the back of the desk and said, "Sit down." Her face was still flushed, but her voice was calm and majestic, not allowing any resistance. Although her gaze was still a little dazed, it had already regained its original brilliance. "Sit down, let's talk," Tai Butian said calmly. Chu Yang sat down a little confused. He asked cautiously, What's wrong with you? Let's talk about what?" A smile appeared on Tai Butian's face. She said, "Let's talk today. Let's not talk about national affairs. Let's not talk about the lives of the people. Let's just talk about you and me." "Me and you?" Chu Yang frowned. "Yes, you and me." Tai Butian smiled calmly and said, "Chu Yang, I have been through great changes since I was young. All my family members have passed away. She has been disguised as a man all this time. You know the reason behind it. Here it is. I won't say anything more." Chu Yang smiled bitterly. Indeed, after today's events, there was an explanation for all the puzzles in Iron Cloud Nation and Tai Shicheng's actions. If he still didn't understand, he would really be a fool. "As you know, I like you. I like you with all my heart." Tai Butian looked at Chu Yang with her dignified and beautiful eyes. When it came to talking about her feelings, this emperor didn't have the bashfulness of an ordinary woman at all. She said bluntly, "Perhaps you don't know why I like you. Now I'll tell you. Do you know? When you came to Iron Cloud, it was the most difficult time for Iron Cloud. At that time, there was no hope for Iron Cloud at all. Even Imperial Uncle Tai Longqing said, Iron Cloud would sooner or later become Diwuqing Ro's achievement. What we had to do was to extend this time infinitely. We had to hold on for as long as we could. At that time, I was struggling every day. I was in despair every day. I couldn't sleep for several days. Even if I did sleep, I would immediately have a nightmare and wake up. But countless people were watching me. If I broke down, Iron Cloud would be completely finished. Even the last hope would be gone. I could only force myself to be calm and act like I was in control of the world. On the surface, I was calm every day, but the fear and helplessness in my heart was something no one could know. No one could understand. The entire Iron Cloud Nation, the burden of hundreds of millions of people, the hope of generations, were all placed on the shoulders of a weak woman like me. 2 drops of tears slowly flowed down from Tai Butian's eyes. However, from the top to the bottom of Iron Cloud, from the officials to the commoners, to the merchants, and even to the beggars and prostitutes, Diwuqing has investigated countless times. I knew, but I really didn't have the energy to do anything. In the south, Diwuqing army was watching covetously. Golden Horse Riders Department was on standby. In the north, wolves from the grasslands were coming south at any time. Iron Cloud was in chaos. Father was critically ill. You don't know how much pressure I was under, Tai Butian said miserably. At that time, I wanted to kill myself countless times to end this torment. Do you know? Although I was the Empress, the only successor of Iron Cloud Nation, I was still a woman. I needed someone to rely on. But at that time, there was no one for me to rely on. Instead, I wanted to be everyone's support. Chapter 1194. Chu Yang sighed. Thinking of the pressure that Tai Butian had to endure, even he, who had endured countless hardships, could not help but feel sad. At that time, Tai Butian, as a weak woman, was able to withstand the pressure of the sky collapsing. It was a miracle, a one-of-a-kind miracle in the heavenly layer world. Even the hero Tai Longqing was in despair, let alone a weak woman like Tai Butian. Other than Tai Butian, no other woman in the heavenly layer world would have been able to withstand it. My name is a man's name. Before I was born, my father had already chosen a name for me. He longed for an emperor with great talent and strategy to mend the collapsing sky of Iron Cloud. But after I was born, I was still a woman. In his despair, my father placed all his hopes on me. But he did not know that a man and a woman are different. No matter how strong I am still a woman. But I grew up just like that. Hobutian smiled sadly. I was raised as a man. Do you know, when I was 12 or 13 years old, I still firmly believed that I was a man. Chuyang, don't you think this is funny? Chuyang lowered his head and sighed deeply. As an outsider, just listening to the story was enough to make one feel extremely depressed. However, as the main character in the story, Tai Butian had endured it for more than 10 years. How did she get through it? Tai Butian paused for a while and said, Iron Cloud was declining day by day. I was already in despair. I could no longer see any hope. But at that time, you appeared outside Iron Cloud Citadel. The first time you appeared, you were dressed in black, like a whirlwind blowing across the earth. I still remember when your eyes met mine. It was a strange feeling. It was as if I should not have seen you, but I did. It was very strange. Chuyang's heart shook. He clearly remembered the situation at that time. At that time, Chuyang left Du Shiqing's group and came north by himself. Outside Iron Cloud Citadel, he met Tai Butian for the first time. Their gazes met from afar. At that time, Chuyang's gaze was cold and sharp, proud and wild, like the wolf king of the northern plains. Sharp as a sword and cold as ice. Those eyes were filled with ruthlessness. Under such a gaze, all living beings in the world were ants that could be slaughtered. The heavenly palace was like grass that could be trampled on. However, Tai Butian's gaze was gentle, warm, and tranquil. In fact, it seemed as if he was overlooking the common people from the clouds. His lofty aura of a king spread with the wind. I'm here, and I'm the king. Under the heavens, there is no land that belongs to the king. There is no land that belongs to the king. One was intentional, the other unintentional, but both of them gave it their all without prior consultation. This was a contest. However, there was no winner or loser in this contest. If Chuyang's gaze was the waves, then Tai Butian's gaze was the reef. The waves surged, rolling up 1,000 piles of snow. The reef stood tall and motionless. Was it the reef that broke the waves? Or did the waves drown the reef? Who could say for sure who would win and who would lose? However, after this glance, Chuyang was like a gust of wind, sweeping past Tai Butian's troops like a whirlwind. With a swoosh, he turned into a shadow and disappeared in the direction of the city gate. From the beginning to the end, his gaze never changed. Tai Butian also retracted her gaze calmly, deep in thought. At this moment, it was as if a mottled and broken reflection of time and space had appeared in front of Chuyang's eyes. This was an extremely mysterious feeling. This was a meeting that was completely outside of fate. Chuyang was a little lost in thought as he recalled the scene at that time. A look of reminiscence appeared on his face. He didn't expect that at that time. Not only did he have such a feeling, Tai Butian also had the same feeling. Two people who shouldn't have met at all, outside of fate, met each other. Only Chuyang knew how wrong it was for the two of them to meet at that time. Because in his previous life, Tai Butian's army was defeated and Iron Cloud was destroyed. It was because he had foreseen all of this in this life, changed everything, and led to their meeting. If that was all, it wouldn't be a big deal. But after you arrived at Iron Cloud Citadel, you immediately opened the Heavenly Armament Pavilion. Tai Butian smiled faintly. Before you came, I was discussing the current situation with Royal Uncle. I asked, how can we turn defeat into victory? Royal Uncle said, the current situation is already impossible to reverse. If we want to turn defeat into victory, we can only do so if heavenly troops and generals appear in Iron Cloud. Hearing the words heavenly troops and generals, Chuyang's heart skipped a beat. The day before, after saying that sentence, the Heavenly Armament Pavilion appeared the next day. Tai Butian smiled. So, I went to see the weapon at the first opportunity. Brother Chu, do you still remember your first customer, a girl in green? Chu Yang was suddenly enlightened. It was also for this reason that royal uncle also rushed to the heavenly armament pavilion at the first opportunity. Tai Butian smiled. Heavenly troops and generals have always only appeared in legends. But your appearance was too coincidental. It made royal uncle and me feel like we had come back from the jaws of death. I'm even doubting if it's true. Could it be that there were really heavenly troops and generals? Although we knew that this was nonsense. Although we knew that the two of us at the highest level of Ironcloud Citadel believed in this kind of thing. At that time, we were already in despair. We were already at our wits' end. So things continued like that. Otherwise, did you really think that you, an outsider, could attract the attention of the most important official in the military by coming to Ironcloud and hanging a few swords? Haha. Tai Butian laughed a little self-deprecatingly. Then we started to get in touch. The first time we met, I also told you what was in my heart. I am not someone who can't keep things in my heart. I also never talked about my hardships. But at that time, I stubbornly believed that if there was still hope for Ironcloud, then let the heavenly troops and generals turn the situation around. Although it was ridiculous at that time, I was really in despair. Then you became the pavilion master of the heavenly armament pavilion. When I saw that you used a mob to ferret out the spies one by one, Ironcloud quickly became clean. When I saw that you used any clues to eliminate the hidden dangers, I felt that I did not misjudge you, until you used many factors to fight against Golden Horse Riders Department in Ironcloud Citadel, and gained the upper hand, causing the king-level leader of Golden Horse Riders Department to fall here. At that time, I suddenly had confidence. When you were working hard, I worked 10 times harder than you because I could not let your efforts go to waste. Slowly, when everything was on the right track, I realized that I was very dependent on your help. Slowly, from nothing to something, I was very dependent on you. When you were working hard, I was full of energy and handling everything. If I heard that Minister Chu was not in a good mood today, then I also lost the mood to handle official business. Perhaps this is the biggest difference between men and women. Men can suppress these strange thoughts, but women cannot. No matter how strong a woman is in despair, she will still look for someone to rely on. And you at that time gave me the feeling of someone to rely on. Tai Butian smiled sadly. It was also from that time onwards that I would frequently look for you to chat. Perhaps that was the beginning of my feelings for you. Until you left Ironcloud Citadel for Great Zhao for Ironcloud. You did not care about your life and death in Great Zhao. I was suddenly shocked by you. During the days when you left, I prayed for your safety every day. I hoped for your return every day. Slowly, when you were not around, my heart fell for you. When I heard that you came back from thousands of miles away, I was excited and immediately went to welcome you. But at that time, the border was in a state of emergency. Later, no matter what the reason was, I finally came to your rescue. However, I found that this heavenly soldier who risked his life for Ironcloud was infected with lust. So, I did not hesitate to save you. I did not hesitate to lose my virginity. Even if people thought that I was a shameless woman, I still wanted you to live. You left and left me with a child. I was sad but also happy. When Tai Butian was saying these words, she blushed, bashful and gloomy. However, her eyes continued to look at Chu Yang very brightly. You are here today. You know what happened back then. So, I understand all your feelings. You don't have to explain anything. Tai Butian said deeply. I can understand everything you say, everything you do, and everything you feel. If I were to explain, it would be much clearer than if you were to explain it yourself. I only want to ask you. Tai Butian suddenly stood up and looked at Chu Yang. Who do you think I am? Who do you think I am? Minister Chu was tongue-tied. You think that you can do whatever you want to me just because I cured your poison and gave you my chastity? Tai Butian's face was red, but her eyes were aggressive. You think that you can do whatever you want to me just because I gave birth to a child for you? You think that you have some kind of power over me just because you know the truth? May I ask, Minister Chu, Tribulation Sword Master? Tai Butian covered her clothes and pressed forward. What do you think I am? Do you think I'm just a cheap woman, that you can vent your lust on without any feelings? Do you know that although I gave you my chastity and gave birth to your child, my dignity, my pride, I didn't lose anything at all? Tai Butian's eyes were burning. Do you know? I have more self-respect than any other woman in the world. What do you think I am? The moment you came, you tore my clothes and did all these things to me. Am I a mistress that you kept? Am I the kind of shameless woman that seduces men? Am I the kind of brothel girl that you think I am? You know that I like you. I love you with all my heart, and I have already given you everything I have. So, do you think that you are already doing me a great favor by lowering your status to come back to me? No matter how you treat me, I should be willing to do it? Should be grateful to you? Be grateful to you? Because you finally want me. Because you are finally taking responsibility? So I should be grateful to you? So I should accept whatever you do to me? No, I didn't. That's not what I meant. Sweat broke out on Chu Yang's forehead. This, let me explain. You didn't. Tai Butian looked at him. But you did it to me. Have you seen me in female clothes? Have you seen my real face even once? Do you like me? Do you have any romantic feelings for me? You don't? Then why do you despise me so much? Chapter 1195. Chu Yang suddenly felt that he was somewhat ashamed of himself. Tai Butian's words weren't wrong. Her rhetorical questions made him even more speechless. Did he like her? Did he love her? Was it just a responsibility? Was there love between a man and a woman? Tai Butian's lips were trembling. I like you. Chu Yang. I love you too. I like you so much that I almost have no sense of self. Every night, you appear in my dreams. I can do anything for you, and I'm willing for you to do anything for me. But I don't want you to treat me as your responsibility. Do you understand? I don't want to be any burden to you. Do you understand? I don't want to be a tool for you to vent your desires. Do you understand? I want to be a complete woman. Even if you don't like me, my love is still complete. I just don't want you to trample on it. Chu Yang's face was pale. That's all I have to say. Tai Butian exhaled and said apologetically, I'm sorry. Chu Yang. I shouldn't have spoken to you like this. I don't want the man I like to feel bad for me. She paused for a moment and said, I'm done. Chu Yang, it's true that I like you and love you. But it's also true that you don't like me and love me. That's all I have to say. If you still want to do something to me, I won't resist you either. If you insist on wanting me, I'll give it to you. I'll do my best to make you happy. But this is because I like you, not because you like me. She closed her eyes and said, Chu Yang, if you want to do something, then what are you waiting for? Chu Yang staggered backward and said in a trembling voice, Don't force me. Tai Butian closed her eyes and stood upright. 2 streams of tears flowed down from the corners of her eyes. I admit that I've never seen you before. After I found out about what happened to you, I felt guilty toward you. Even if there was love, it was also out of guilt. I did this to you because, as you said, we already have a child together. I didn't think it was wrong, but I didn't think that this would hurt you deeply. I went overboard with what happened today, Chu Yang said solemnly. I apologize to you. I've never loved you before, and I don't have any romantic feelings for you. I admit it. Right now, I only have a man's desire to conquer you. I admit it. Following Chu Yang's narration, Tai Butian closed her eyes in despair, her heart as cold as ice. But Chu Yang raised his head and looked at her with clear eyes. No matter what you say, we are already inseparable. This is also a fact. You are my woman. That is unchangeable. We have children together. That is undeniable. Butian, I will try my best to make myself like you, any bit of you, and make myself love you. Chu Yang walked forward slowly and gently held Tai Butian in his arms. He said softly, I will make you a happy woman. I will also make you feel that your feelings for me are not in vain. At that time, you will naturally be able to tell whether my feelings for you are sincere or not, and whether they come from my own heart, or because of the child and my responsibility. If I can't do that, I won't touch a single strand of your hair. So please give me a little time. Chu Yang hugged her gently and said in her ear, I, Chu Yang, am not a good person either. But Would you believe me if I were to be a complete hooligan? Tai Butian smiled with tears in her eyes and said softly, I believe you. She raised her head and opened her eyes. Looking at Chu Yang, she asked, Aren't you a hooligan? Chu Yang smiled. When I fall in love with you, you will realize that my hooliganism is something you can't handle. Tai Butian's face flushed red at once. She lowered her head in shame and embarrassment. The conversation between the two was very serious. But when it came to the last two sentences, the two of them coincidentally adopted a relaxed way of talking, uniformly and tacitly alleviating the tense atmosphere between them. Both of them were smart people. They would never let the situation between them become irreparable. Just as Chu Yang had said, what had already happened would never change. The existence of the child made the two of them even more inseparable. Since that was the case, why not face it together and work hard together to change this situation? It's just that I'm very sorry. Chu Yang's voice was very pained. You are not the only one in my heart. There are others as well. So, Tai Butian smiled softly and said, The one who should be sorry is me, right? You only have one heart from the beginning to the end. It's just that since you know about this matter, you can't possibly abandon it. So you want to force yourself to divide your heart? Chu Yang took a deep breath and nodded. You can say that. I didn't want you to know about it previously precisely because of this. Tai Butian smiled and said gently, It would be best if I could keep it a secret forever. Even if you didn't know, you wouldn't be worse than a pig or a dog. You wouldn't feel guilty either. Therefore, your state of mind would still be perfect. But since you know about it, I won't ask you to abandon us either. That would also be a kind of cruelty to you. Tai Butian smiled lightly. With my status, I can't be a good wife for you either. She deliberately sighed. Besides, a playboy like you hasn't taken a fancy to me yet. Chu Yang couldn't help but shake his head and smile bitterly. At this moment, he truly realized Tai Butian's good points. This woman was usually decisive in killing, controlling the world, and ruling over the world. But she was extremely considerate towards him. She knew all his feelings like the back of her hand. Every word she said was to avoid making things difficult for him. Chu Yang sighed and said emotionally, Butian, if only you weren't the emperor, how good would you be? The depths of Tai Butian's eyes lit up. She clearly received the pity in Chu Yang's words. She murmured, Chu Yang, you're already starting to like me a little. Chu Yang chuckled, and the two of them parted ways. Chu Yang looked at Tai Butian sincerely and said softly, I hope you can forgive me for what happened today. Tai Butian raised her head and looked at Chu Yang. Her face was a little red, but she said calmly and softly, Do you know the greatest good thing about you is that unless you don't do anything wrong, once you're really in the wrong, you'll never deny it, shirk responsibility or defend yourself. I like it very much. After a pause, she said solemnly, I forgive you. Chu Yang heaved a sigh of relief and said softly, Thank you. You know, we need to start afresh. I don't want to leave any bad impression in your heart. Tai Butian's eyes moved and she said with a smile, But us women only love one person in our lives. If we don't cherish it and force ourselves to leave a knot in our hearts, isn't that very stupid? She smiled softly. As a woman, we have to cherish ourselves. We have to cherish what we have. She said softly, Life is short. Chu Yang chuckled and found another good thing about this intelligent woman. She was open-minded. Chu Yang suddenly thought of something. Oh right. How did you know that I'm the Tribulation Sword Master? Tai Butian smiled mischievously. I've already consumed the heavy elixir that you left for me. She sighed a little despondently. It's a pity that although there's a Tribulation Sword Master in this world, there's still a gap of a year after all. If father could hold on for a little longer. Chu Yang also nodded heavily. Tai Butian's words were right. When Tai Shicheng died, Chu Yang hadn't obtained any of the great elixirs. He only needed a little more than half a year to get them. But he ultimately couldn't hold on for another half a year. Especially now, Chu Yang sighed even more. Tai Butian was a woman, and also his woman. If Tai Shicheng could live, then how wonderful would it be for his family to reunite and return to the upper three heavens peacefully and happily. All the mess in the lower three heavens could be left to his father-in-law to deal with. But now, it's too late to say anything. So you knew that it was a heavy elixir? And confirmed my identity as the Tribulation Sword Master? Chu Yang's eyes flashed. No. It was when the child was born that my master confirmed the heavy pill. But, Tai Butian smiled faintly, since I know that you are the master of Calamity Sword, how could I leak this information? That's why I'm the only one who knows about your identity. And I've never told anyone about the person who gave me the heavy elixir. Chu Yang was startled. Your master? Tai Butian smiled. My father's name is Lan Meixian. She paused and said softly and slowly. He's from the Long clan of the Upper Three Heavens. Chu Yang made a sound and was momentarily stunned. Then he broke out in cold sweat. He really didn't expect this. Tai Butian's master was actually Lan Meixian, and he even kept the heavy elixir back then. If not for Tai Butian's meticulous thinking, perhaps his identity would have been known by all the heavens by now. Thinking of how Lan Meixian's life was uncertain under his sword, Chu Yang felt a little guilty. She doesn't know, right? Am I such an ignorant person? Tai Butian rolled her eyes at him. Then, Tai Butian seemed to have thought of something, and her pretty face turned red. Why are you blushing? Chu Yang asked curiously. It seems like your mother is my senior sister. Tai Butian said hesitantly. Chu Yang was really shocked. He had never thought about this in the past. He had always thought that Yang Ruolin came from a family. Moreover, Yang Ruolin had never revealed her cultivation in front of him, so he really didn't know who his mother's master was. He didn't expect it to be Lan Meixian. Chu Yang was a little dizzy. The two people who were closest to him were both Lan Meixian's disciples. And Lan Meixian's life-threatening sword move was created by him? This matter seemed a little troublesome. In that case, do I still have to call you Junior Martial Ant? Chu Yang's eyes widened. Tai Butian blushed and pouted. If you want to call me Junior Martial Ant, that's up to you. Chu Yang sighed. No wonder the ancients said that if you want to learn, you have to sleep with your Junior Martial Ant. The next moment, Minister Chu was engulfed by a wave of angry punches. Then he was kicked in the stomach. He grimaced in pain as he was thrown out of the room. This woman was truly worthy of being an emperor. She was so violent. Can I say that the 2 chapters of the push and tumble play that I've written are all wasted today? Sigh. I was originally complacent about having 2 chapters saved. Damn it. Looks like I'm not the kind of person who can save chapters. That time, I ended up sleeping for 2 days and used it. That time, I ended up catching a cold and used it. Another time, my computer broke down and both computers were scrapped at the same time. Then this time, the plot changed and it was gone. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.